Chapter 586. In the main hall, the intensity of the battle between Chu Xiao and Zhong Xian had even far exceeded the battle between some martial Dao masters. The intensity made everyone present feel a little scared. Both of them were really angry. There was no benefit, no hatred, just a battle for victory. Zhong Xian's Wisdom King's wrath, Chu Xiao's sun-changing technique, Buddha's flame aura was burning fiercely. As the two of them fought, the bronze pillars around them actually began to crack, and the entire main hall began to shake. Seeing this scene, Taoist Guangning hurriedly said loudly, "You two be careful. If you continue to fight like this, the entire main hall will be destroyed by you." Normally, not to mention the battle between two Unity of Heaven realm martial artists, even a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse wouldn't be able to destroy the three pristine temples branch hall. However, the three pristine temples branch hall had already experienced the baptism of an ancient great calamity, and the external formation was also destroyed by Taoist Guangning and the others. Without the protection of the formation, it was actually already very fragile. It was just that when these martial Dao masters fought before, they only fought for the Dao accumulation. They mainly fought for the Dao accumulation, not to kill each other, so it wasn't too intense. However, just now Zhang Qingjun was fighting fiercely with the five people, and now Chu Xiao and Zhong Xian were fighting to such an extent, the entire three pristine temples branch hall was already a bit overwhelmed. However, at this time, Chu Xiao and Zhong Xian's battle had already reached such an intense degree, even if they were asked to stop, they couldn't do it, so how could they care about other things? The Buddha's light in Zhong Xian's eyes surged, and the four-faced and eight-armed Wisdom King's shadow behind him completely faded, but it evolved into the immovable Wisdom King's shadow. Guard the heart, save all living beings. Hearing much and not moving, suppress evil and kill demons. The immovable Wisdom King was the head of the five Wisdom Kings, and Zhong Xian's immovable Wisdom King seal had already achieved 90% of its charm. Finally, the Wisdom King's shadow was directly imprinted in Zhong Xian's body, causing dense Buddhist Sanskrit to appear around his body. As the Wisdom King, Zhong Xian used himself as the carrier to completely fill the last bit of charm. With a loud bang, Zhong Xian directly resisted Chu Xiao's demonic dance with his body. His body was full of flaws, and he didn't even need to use Heaven's sun gazing technique to investigate. Zhong Xian gripped the blade tightly with both hands. Chu Xiao's power exploded to the extreme, but Zhong Xian, with the support of the immovable Wisdom King's power, was even stronger than Chu Xiao's, making the demonic dance unable to break free. Chu Xiao could clearly sense that his Buddha flame chi was burning, and the powerful force that was exchanged for it was something that Chu Xiao couldn't take head-on right now. Right, Chu Xiao, and Xiao's body, Chen, and Devil King, Xiao, and Shui, and Iming holding the saber in his left hand, Zhong Xian pressed his right hand down on the Chu Xiao seal. It was as if the earth was shaking and the mountains were collapsing. Chu Xiao's eyes flashed with killing intent. He loosened his saber and retreated, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he gathered his killing intent in his fist and used the annihilating heaven and earth annihilating oblivion killing fist to clash with Zhong Xian. The two fists collided, and the ground on both sides shattered inch by inch. The bronze that was reinforced by the formation was even blasted into slag. Chen Qingdi, who was at the back, rubbed his chin. He could sense from Chu Xiao's punch that there was actually a part of his fist intent. Although it was only a small part, with the addition of this trace of fist intent, Chu Xiao's fist had a spirit, and its power was enough to multiply. Chen Qingdi vaguely remembered that he had only punched once in front of Chu Xiao, but Chu Xiao had actually remembered his fist intent and displayed it to a degree that was not inferior to his disciple Xie Xiao Lu's. It must be known that Xie Xiao Lu was his direct disciple. Chu Xiao had only seen him attack once, but Xie Xiao Lu had seen him attack countless times. Moreover, Chen Qingdi had deliberately displayed his fist intent martial path in front of Xie Xiao Lu, breaking it down and explaining it step by step. This allowed Xie Xiao Lu to cultivate it to the point where it was 30% similar in form and 10% similar in spirit. It was just a bluff. But now when Chu Xiao used it, it was 30% similar in form and 10% similar in spirit. This immediately gave Chen Qingdi a feeling that people should die when compared to people, and goods should be thrown away when compared to goods. He even wanted to drag Xie Xiao Lu over and beat him up to vent his anger. Moreover, Chen Qingdi was not only thinking about it, he really intended to do so. Looking around, Chen Qingdi found that Xie Xiao Lu was watching the fight with Lu Fengxian and Luo Fei Heng. He could not help but coldly snort and did not make a move, giving Xie Xiao Lu some face in front of his friends. Xie Xiaolu, who was seriously watching the fight between Chu Xiu and Zhong Xian, suddenly felt a chill on his back. He touched his head, looked around, and did not seem to be in any danger. Who wanted to harm him? At this time, on the battlefield, Zhong Xian had condensed the power of the immovable Wisdom King into his body. Under the intense burning of the Buddha flame aura qi, Zhong Xian felt an unparalleled and terrifying power, even suppressing Chu Xiu, forcing Chu Xiu to abandon his blade. The situation was instantly reversed. Seeing this scene, Su Xing also let out a long breath. Losing to Zhang Qingzhen was a loss, but as long as he did not lose to Chu Xiu, Zhong Xian would still be number 1 on the Longhu list. But before Su Xing could finish his breath, the situation on the battlefield had already changed. Other than not using the unique martial arts of Lin Ye's identity, Chu Xiu had already exerted his strength to the extreme. Zhong Xian was a very good opponent, because his martial arts were very similar to Chu Xiu's in a certain aspect. They were both firm and imposing, incomparably violent. Right now, Zhong Xian was condensing the power of the immovable Wisdom King, while Chu Xiu was operating the Great Sun-changing technique. Both sides' strength had been raised to the extreme, and they did not even have time to think. They were both subconsciously attacking, using brute force. Chu Xiu himself was also immersed in this state. Every punch and kick was based on instinct, combat instinct. Subconsciously, Chu Xiu used the fast and slow 9 words formula. Actually, the power of the fast and slow 9 words formula was already somewhat unable to keep up with Chu Xiu's strength. If he used a single seal, he would definitely be crushed by Zhong Xian. But in the end, Chu Xiu's attacks became faster and faster. The Great Vajra Wheel Seal, the Wisdom Fist Seal, the Perfect Aquarius Seal, and other seals were used. Gradually, Chu Xiu's seals began to blur. It was not that his seals were not accurate, but the speed at which they were being formed was too fast. When the speed at which he was forming the seals reached the extreme, Chu Xiu suddenly produced a seal that he had never used before. In an instant, 9 streams of power gathered and did not dissipate. Like a wheel, they connected in front of Chu Xiu and emitted a deep Buddhist light. Chu Xiu's eyes were slightly closed. Around him, there was the sound of cloud dan music, which could even make people intoxicated. Chu Xiu was dressed in black and his black hair was blown by the Gang Qi in the 9-seal wheel. Although everyone knew that he was a ruthless person, at this moment, Chu Xiu gave people a feeling that he was a Buddha. Su Xing looked at Chu Xiu with a black face. This guy could be said to be the second person he wanted to get rid of since he entered Xiaofan Tian. The first was Lin Yi, who had seriously injured him with 1 slash, a little devil cultivated by the Yinma clan. And this Chu Xiu in front of him, he had first cultivated both the devil and Buddha, and now he had cultivated a tantric technique to such an extent. This made Su Xing very unhappy. The Great Light Temple was considered a branch of the Zen sect among the branches of the Buddhist sect. Although there were many techniques that were related to the tantric sect, most of them were tantric sect techniques that had been assimilated. However, what Chu Xiu displayed was an extremely authentic tantric sect technique. Su Xing, an ancient martial art practitioner from the Great Light Temple, naturally loathed it. At this moment, in the field, Zhong Xian's eyes were shining brightly. He did not know what martial arts Chu Xiu was using, but his intuition told him that Chu Xiu was very dangerous at this moment. The immovable Ming King seal fell, and in an instant, the surrounding qi of heaven and earth gave off a violent sonic boom. Layers of power exploded, like shaking mountains and shattering the earth. At this moment, Chu Xiu's eyes suddenly opened, and endless light sprinkled down. As the seal in Chu Xiu's hands fell, in an instant, the 9 seals merged into one, unparalleled in heaven and earth. This was the performance of the fast and slow 9 words formula at its peak. The 9 words formula cycled, growing and multiplying endlessly. Finally, the 9 seals merged into one, and the power was earth-shattering. The 9 words formula smashed down one after another, golden light bloomed, and Zhong Xian was forced to retreat step by step. The fast and slow 9 words formula was named fast and slow, but when the 9 seals were combined, there were thousands of changes. When the 9 seals merged into one, the complexity of the power was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. For this technique, Chu Xiu had started cultivating 1 seal at a time, and in the end, he had displayed each seal to the extreme. Finally, when the 9 seals merged into one, it could be considered to have achieved great success. Zhong Xian's immovable Ming King seal could withstand one type of power, but it could not withstand this ever-changing combination of power. The power of the Ming king around him continued to collapse, and finally, with a loud bang, it completely shattered. With a loud bang, the light of the 9 seals roulette bloomed to the extreme, and Zhong Xian's body was directly smashed into the ground. Countless bronze fragments exploded, and a stream of blood flowed from Zhong Xian's mouth. Su Xing's face instantly darkened. No one present had expected that Zhong Xian would actually lose to Chu Xiao. He had fought with Zhang Qingzhen on the Longhu leaderboard for more than 10 years. Not only did he not defeat Zhang Qingzhen, but Zhang Qingzhen had also stepped into the martial path Grandmaster realm before him. In the end, he had lost to Chu Xiao, and his ranking was lower than Chu Xiao's. However, at this time, Chu Xiao did not feel good either. His face was pale, and anyone could see that it was abnormally pale. 9 seals as 1. It seemed like Chu Xiao had only used one move, but in fact, every time the 9 seals roulette rotated, it was equivalent to Chu Xiao continuously blasting out the complete fast and slow 9 words formula. That was why the power was so varied. The fast and slow 9 words formula had already consumed a lot of energy. Normally, it would not be a problem for Chu Xiao to use more than 10 seals. However, just now, how many seals did Chu Xiao use? Dozens or hundreds of seals. Even he couldn't count it clearly anymore. In the bronze pit, Zhong Xian struggled to get up. His eyes were still shining, and he wanted to fight again. But in the instant that he crawled up, the entire hall suddenly began to shake violently. Large pieces of bronze fell down, and with the support of the remnant formation, they weighed over 10,000 catties. One of the 5 Chi's origin stage martial artists who was caught off guard tried to resist, but he was forcefully smashed into meat paste by these fragments. Chapter 587. The bronze hall collapsed. It wasn't just the entire hall that collapsed, but the arrays within it as well. Although the ancient arrays had been damaged by the great tribulation of heaven and earth, some of their power still remained. The unlucky guy who was crushed to death earlier was proof of that. Thus, no one was in the mood to continue fighting. They wanted to end the fight quickly, turning to flee. Chu Xiao, who was the closest to the Dao accumulation, grabbed it, put it into the secret space box, and ran away. He had exhausted too much of his power. Even if Zhong Xian wanted to continue fighting, he didn't want to. If he did, he would be fighting Zhong Xian with his life on the line. At the same time, Fang Qishao and Ying Bailu stopped fighting at the same time. The fight between the two of them was very exciting. However, Chu Xiao had stolen the limelight, so no one paid attention to it. Even so, Fang Qishao still had the upper hand in this fight. The sword of karma was really unsolvable. The number of ways to break it could be counted on one's fingers. Another way was to be like Chu Xiao, who was also proficient in the Tao of karma. The two of them were competing in the understanding of the Tao of karma. Another way was to be like Zhong Xian, who used brute force to break all things. His defensive and offensive power were extremely shocking. It didn't matter if it was karma or reincarnation. Only by surpassing him in power could one truly hurt him. Just like how Chu Xiao and Zhong Xian fought earlier. The last one was even more difficult. Earlier, Zhang Qingzhen used extreme speed and subtle control of power to break the Tao of karma. This was a technique that ordinary people couldn't do. However, Fang Qishao knew that even though he had the upper hand, Ying Bailu wasn't going all out. The Ying clan of Shangshui River was best at hiding their strength. It was impossible for Ying Bailu to reveal all his trump cards until it was a real life and death battle. At this time, 7th young Master Fang looked around and murmured, "Where's Lin Kaiyun? Where the hell did he go?" Although they were both from Sword King City, Fang Qishao loathed Lin Kaiyun. This fellow was too narrow-minded. Back in Sword King City, Fang Qishao didn't put Lin Kaiyun in his eyes at all. As a result, Lin Kaiyun targeted him at every turn, treating him as an imaginary enemy and dreaming of surpassing him one day. Not only that, Lin Kaiyun also spoke ill of him in secret. However, the other party was from Sword King City, after all. Considering that they were from the same sect, Fang Qishao couldn't just ignore him. Although he said that Lin Kaiyun was dead, he couldn't just watch Lin Kaiyun get into trouble. However, at this time, Fang Qishao did not know that Lin Kaiyun had actually been at the entrance of the main hall all along, looking at Chu Xiao, Zhang Qingzhen, and the others with jealousy, and even Fang Qishao. Not everyone was qualified to snatch the Tao accumulation. At the very least, one had to have the strength of the unity of heaven and man realm. Lin Kaiyun was not qualified, and he was not an idiot. Therefore, he just stayed at the entrance and watched the battle. When he saw how heroic the little celestial master Zhang Qingzhen was when he fought against 5 people alone, Lin Kaiyun's heart surged with emotions, but more than that, he felt jealousy. Why wasn't he the one who fought against 5 pugilistic world's elites alone, gathering wind and thunder to step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm? Not to mention becoming Zhang Qingzhen. If he could become one of the 5 people personally challenged by Zhang Qingzhen, it would be enough for him to become famous in pugilistic world. Being challenged by Zhang Qingzhen proved that they stood at the peak of the same realm and had the strength to put pressure on Zhang Qingzhen. This was a kind of recognition of strength. After this battle, not only Zhang Qingzhen, but also Chu Xiao and the other 4 people's brilliance would not be overshadowed. Unfortunately, Lin Kaiyun could only look up to this glory. How he wished he was also one of the 5 people. But he was not. He could only watch helplessly as the 7th young master Feng, who was from the same faction as him and had never looked serious, swaggered around and was praised by others. The flames of jealousy in his heart almost ignited Lin Kaiyun. At the same time, a wave of resentment rose in his heart. He resented the heavens for being unfair. In Sword King City, 7th young master Feng spent his days either drinking or strolling around in a frivolous manner. He was never serious, but the seniors of the sect doted on him. No matter what absurd things he did, the seniors of Sword King City would only reprimand him. They didn't even punish him. What about him? There were 24 hours in a day, and he spent 20 hours practicing his sword. If his progress was slow, he would be punished by the elders and be told to learn from Feng Qixiao. But what was the result? Why couldn't he be compared to Feng Qixiao? He worked so hard, but why couldn't he be compared to Feng Qixiao? If the heavens weren't unfair, then what was? At this moment, Lin Kaiyun's jealousy towards Feng Qixiao had escalated into hatred. However, reason told him that he couldn't do anything to Feng Qixiao. Feng Qixiao was the future of Sword King City and its successor. If he dared to show any malice towards Feng Qixiao, he would definitely be punished. Moreover, with his current strength, he couldn't pose a threat to Feng Qixiao except for some conspiracies. Therefore, Lin Kaiyun turned his eyes and looked maliciously at Chu Xiao, who had just obtained the Dao accumulation and was fleeing towards the exit. His hatred for Chu Xiao was even stronger than his hatred for Feng Qixiao. It was because of Chu Xiao that his state of mind had been damaged, causing him to be depressed for such a long time and delaying his cultivation. Otherwise, he would have entered the unity of heaven and man realm long ago. Moreover, the relationship between Chu Xiao and Feng Qixiao was quite good. This made Lin Kaiyun direct his jealousy and hatred towards Feng Qixiao onto Chu Xiao. Of course, the most important thing was that Lin Kaiyun now believed that he could touch Chu Xiao. Although Lin Kaiyun's strength wasn't that great, it was only when compared to outstanding geniuses like Chu Xiao. In fact, compared to most martial artists of the same age, his strength was quite good. Otherwise, Sword King City wouldn't have nurtured him like this. Although Sword King City mainly nurtured Feng Qixiao, Lin Kaiyun's treatment was second only to Feng Qixiao's. The seniors of Sword King City thought that when Feng Qixiao took over Sword King City in the future, he would need a few subordinates who could handle the situation. Lin Kaiyun was one such person. However, the seniors of Sword King City didn't expect that this differential treatment would make a narrow-minded person like Lin Kaiyun hate Feng Qixiao out of jealousy. No matter what, Lin Kaiyun was also a disciple carefully nurtured by a major sect. He could still see Chu Xiao's current state. Even if Chu Xiao won against Zhong Xian, his strength and stamina were exhausted to the extreme. It was even more serious than Zhong Xian, who vomited blood. Chu Xiao was now an arrow at the end of its flight, and Guan Xiyu was also far away. Therefore it could be said that Chu Xiao was at his weakest. If Lin Kaiyun didn't seize this opportunity, he might not be able to take revenge for the rest of his life. Moreover, if he killed Chu Xiao and obtained the Dao accumulation, he would also have the opportunity to surpass Feng Qixiao in the future. However, although Lin Kaiyun's heart was filled with jealousy and hatred, he also knew that he couldn't kill Chu Xiao alone. It was more likely that he would be killed instead. Therefore, Lin Kaiyun ran to the side where there was a group of people watching the battle. These people were the Azure Wave Sword Sect's martial artists who entered the small mortal sky first. They were led by Azure Wave Sword Sect's eldest disciple, Do Guangchen. Previously, Lu Zongyuan stopped Dou Guangchen from bringing people in because he had entered the small mortal sky before and knew the dangers. In the end, Dou Guangchen didn't choose to listen to Lu Zongyuan in order to seize the initiative. He insisted on bringing people into the small mortal sky, but the outcome was extremely miserable. For the past few days, Dou Guangchen led the other Azure Wave Sword sect disciples to explore the ruins. As a result, the other disciples were too weak, and even he could barely protect himself. Therefore, this led to the death of nearly half of the Azure Wave Sword sect's martial artists. Dou Guangchen learned his lesson and brought his disciples to gather herbs in peace. Once they found them, they would consume them in the small mortal sky. It was considered a secluded cultivation. As a result, the heavens seemed to be going against Dou Guangchen. Along the way, Dou Guangchen didn't take the initiative to provoke others, but there were others who found him an eyesore and wanted to find trouble with him. For the past few days, Dou Guangchen felt like he had aged by 10 years. Traces of regret arose in his heart. Lin Kaiyun knew that his strength wasn't enough, but Azure Wave Sword sect's eldest disciple, Dou Guangchen, wasn't weak. Quickly arriving at Dou Guangchen's side, Lin Kaiyun cupped his hands and said, "Does Brother Dou recognize me?" In fact, in terms of seniority, Dou Guangchen was 1 generation older than Lin Kaiyun. However, Lin Kaiyun couldn't always address him as senior. This way, their statuses would be different. Dou Guangchen frowned. "Sword King City's Lin Kaiyun? What do you want?" After all, Lin Kaiyun was once ranked top 20 on the Dragon Tiger rankings and still had some reputation in the underworld. Therefore, Dou Guangchen recognized him with a single glance. There wasn't much time, and Lin Kaiyun didn't have time to build a friendship with Dou Guangchen. He went straight to the point. "Brother Dou, I know about the grudge between your Azure Wave Sword sect and Chu Xiao. Now that you have seen Chu Xiao's strength, if you don't eliminate him today, he will definitely eradicate your Azure Wave Sword sect in the future. Now that Chu Xiao fought with Zhong Xian, he has already overexerted himself. Furthermore, Guan Xiu isn't by his side. Right now, Chu Xiao can be said to be at his weakest. You and I will join forces and behead him to avenge the hatred in our hearts. What do you think?" Dou Guangchen heard this and instantly jumped in fright. He quickly said, "Are you crazy? A starving camel is still bigger than a horse. It's not like you didn't see Chu Xiao's prowess just now. If we dare to take advantage of his misfortune with our strength, this is simply courting death." Although Chu Xiao was an enemy, Dou Guangchen couldn't deny Chu Xiao's strength. In the same rank, Chu Xiao was almost at the peak state. A casual attack from him might not even be able to withstand it. Right now, only young elites like Zhong Xian who had accumulated formidable strength at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm and some older martial Dao masters were qualified to be Chu Xiao's opponents. Dou Guangchen didn't want to admit it, but he and Chu Xiao were indeed people from 2 different worlds. Chapter 588. Dou Guangchen wasn't an idiot. He had a grudge with Chu Xiao. The entire Azure Wave Sword sect had a grudge with Chu Xiao, but this didn't mean he would blindly throw away his life. Lin Kaiyun's eyes revealed a hint of coldness. "Of course our strength isn't enough, but I am the direct disciple of the Sword King City. How can I not have any preparations for this trip to the minor heaven? I brought the Sword King City's secret treasure, the blood-dripping sword. This item seizes the soul upon contact with blood and is a first-class murderous weapon. Apart from consuming a large amount of essence blood, it can only be used as a trump card and has almost no flaws. My strength isn't enough to use the blood-dripping sword to its full potential. Brother Dou, you are a martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm. Under the full activation of your chi and blood, it is enough to display 80% of the blood-dripping sword's power. It can even threaten some weaker martial Dao masters." When Chu Xiao was at his peak, this blood-dripping sword had no effect on him, but now that his strength is exhausted with you providing the chi and blood, I will control the blood-dripping sword and execute the sword art. We will definitely be able to kill Chu Xiao." Seeing that Dou Guangchen was still hesitating, Lin Kaiyun quickly persuaded, "Brother Dou, think about it. This is your only chance. If you lose this opportunity, don't mention you wanting to kill Chu Xiao. Even if your Azure Wave Sword sect master Lu Gongyuan came, he won't be able to kill Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao's potential is amazing. He will only get stronger and stronger, making you feel more and more despair. If Brother Dou really doesn't care about the future safety of the Azure Wave Sword sect, then pretend I didn't say anything and I will deal with him myself. You don't have to worry about me tricking you. If I don't have a certain degree of confidence, do you think I will make a move? Lin Kaiyun said so much, but Do Guangchen didn't respond. What truly made Do Guangchen's heart palpitate was Lin Kaiyun's words about the safety of the Azure Wave Sword sect. Do Guangchen was raised by Lu Gongxian. He grew up in the Azure Wave Sword sect since he was young. To him, the Azure Wave Sword sect was like his home. Back then, Lu Gongxian had decided to nurture Shen Bai with all his might instead of his eldest disciple. It would be a lie if Do Guangchen did not feel the slightest bit of jealousy and unwillingness in his heart. But for the sake of the Azure Billow Sword sect's future and the benefits of the Azure Billow Sword sect, he, Do Guangchen, was willing to be wronged. He was willing to pretend to be the bad guy in front of Shen Bai and give him pressure. It didn't matter if he died, but what Do Guangchen was truly worried about was the Azure Water Sword sect's future. Although Lu Gongxian had said that Shen Bai was not crippled and that he was still in seclusion, as long as he could come out smoothly, he would definitely soar into the sky. Do Guangchen had naturally heard of the legends of the Azure Water Sword sect's back mountain. After so many years, he had never heard of any Azure Water Sword sect ancestor who went into the rear mountains for a life-and-death seclusion to successfully exit and soar into the sky. It wasn't that Do Guangchen didn't trust Shen Bai, but the probability was too low. Right now, Do Guangchen was watching as Chu Xiu flaunted his prowess in front of so many experts and even defeated Zhong Xian. All of this made Do Guangchen feel threatened. The current Chu Xiu already had this kind of strength. When the day came when he was promoted to Martial Dao Master and their Azure Water Sword sect was gradually declining, if Chu Xiu remembered this feud, his Azure Water Sword sect would be at the mercy of others. But just as Do Guangchen was about to agree, he suddenly paused and stared at Lin Kaiyun. He spoke in a deep voice. You are a disciple of the Sword King City. You can kill Chu Xiu because you have the protection of the Sword King City. But if I kill Chu Xiu now, the Guanzhong torture room will definitely not let my Azure Water Sword sect off. When my master was young, he might not be afraid of that Guan Siyu. But now, my master is already old. If I deal with Chu Xiu now, I might be able to kill a future trouble, but it will also put my Azure Water Sword sect in a dead end. Seeing that Chu Xiu was getting closer to the door, Lin Kaiyun couldn't care about anything else. He shouted in a low voice, with my Sword King City protecting you, what are you afraid of? No matter how strong the Guanzhong torture room is, can they be stronger than my Sword King City? Brother Do, if you don't prepare now, it will be too late. You only have two choices now, trust me or not. With my status in the Sword King City, don't you feel assured? Regarding the internal affairs of the Sword King City, Do Guangchen didn't know. Even most outsiders didn't know. In any case, in their opinion, Lin Kaiyun was an existence that was second only to Feng Qishao. In the Sword King City, Lin Kaiyun definitely had a high status and might be able to protect his Azure Water Sword sect. Therefore, Do Guangchen could only take a gamble. In any case, the result was the same for him. If he killed Chu Xiu now, he would have to face the revenge of the Guanzhong torture room. However, there was a certain chance that the Sword King City would protect his Azure Water Sword sect. If it was dragged to the future, Chu Xiu might personally come to the Azure Water Sword sect to settle this grudge. With Chu Xiu's ruthless character, the Azure Water Sword sect would most likely be annihilated. Since it was a gamble, Do Guangchen chose the former. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "What should I do now?" Hearing Do Guangchen's words, the corner of Lin Kaiyun's mouth immediately revealed a trace of a gloomy smile. In fact, in the Sword King City, Lin Kaiyun's treatment was only second to Feng Qishao. It was true, and Lin Kaiyun didn't lie. However, he didn't tell Do Guangchen that if they were talking about 10 points, then Feng Qishao would get 9 points, and he would only get half a point. The other disciples of the Sword King City would get the last half point. Lin Kaiyun might be second to Feng Qishao, but the treatment was like heaven and earth. But Lin Kaiyun dared to guarantee that even if he really killed Chu Xiu and Guan Siyu came looking for trouble, the Sword King City wouldn't hand him over. This was actually the Sword King City's true style. Extremely overbearing. Regardless of whether it was right or wrong, it wouldn't be Lin Kaiyun's fault. Of course, the Sword King City could protect him, but Lin Kaiyun wasn't sure if he could protect the Azure Water Sword sect. Seeing that Chu Xiu was approaching, Lin Kaiyun took out a blood-red long sword from the spatial secret box and said to Do Guangchen, "Burn your essence blood and pour it into the blood drop sword. The more, the better. The faster, the better." Do Guangchen didn't delay and immediately chose to burn his essence blood. A large amount of extremely pure blood mist poured into Lin Kaiyun's blood drop sword. Stimulated by the power of qi and blood, the blood drop sword immediately blossomed with a blood-red radiance. The killing intent trembled, and even Lin Kaiyun felt like he couldn't control it. This blood drop sword used to be the divine weapon of a demon Dao tyrant. However, after that tyrant was killed by the Sword King city, the divine weapon was damaged and the sword spirit was damaged. It could no longer be used normally. Moreover, this item consumed a lot of energy and was incomparably fierce. Most of the Sword King city's martial artists wouldn't use this item, so they gave it to Lin Kaiyun as a life-saving item. As Lin Kaiyun formed a sword art, the killing intent on the blood drop sword was completely released. The blood-red radiance illuminated more than 10 meters and quickly slashed at Chu Xiao. The moment Lin Kaiyun's blood drop sword blossomed with blood-red radiance and aimed at him, Chu Xiao had already sensed the killing intent. However, Chu Xiao was still puzzled. Who would want to kill him at this time? But after thinking about it carefully, it seemed like he had quite a number of enemies. But when Chu Xiao saw that it was Lin Kaiyun and Do Guangchen who made the move, Chu Xiao didn't expect it. These two fellows must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts to actually make a move against him at this time? Chu Xiao had long disregarded a character like Lin Kaiyun, and it was the same for Do Guangchen. Even Chu Xiao from the Azure Billow Sword sect who was behind Do Guangchen didn't even put Chu Xiao in his eyes. The Azure Billow Sword sect's strength had declined severely and was already a thing of the past. Even if Chu Xiao didn't find trouble with the Azure Billow Sword sect, the Azure Billow Sword sect would also gradually weaken after Lu Gongyuan's death. Now, these two fellows actually dared to make a move against him. Were they really tired of living? But Chu Xiao suddenly thought of something and reacted. These two fellows weren't tired of living, but they just wanted to add insult to injury. After he defeated Zhong Xian, his strength and stamina were already severely depleted. Right now, Chu Xiao might not be able to see his complexion, but he reckoned that it should be extremely ugly. Because of this, Lin Kaiyun and Do Guangchen seemed to have some courage and dared to make a move against him. It was a pity that these two didn't know that even if it was a giant dragon that couldn't fly, it wouldn't be eaten by wild dogs. The blood-colored sword light slashed over, and the prowess was shocking enough. Even if Chu Xiao was at his prime, he would have to use 70% of his strength to block it. But the problem was that Chu Xiao didn't need to block it now. At the moment when the bloodlight slashed over, Chu Xiao had already executed the Heaven's Sun gazing at air. It seemed like a simple step, but it was just enough to dodge the bloodlight slash. The bloodlight's strength was indeed not weak, but it was the dripping blood sword itself that was strong, not Lin Kaiyun. Based on the sword technique that he executed with his pitiful sword Dao cultivation, Chu Xiao's Heaven's Sun gazing at air could easily see through it. In fact, as long as Lin Kaiyun raised his hand, Chu Xiao would already be able to see through the trajectory of his move. Therefore, Lin Kaiyun could only watch the scene in front of him in disbelief. Although the bloodlight on his dripping blood sword was powerful, it didn't even touch Chu Xiao's side. It was as if he was deliberately going easy on him. The sword light landed in the empty space near Chu Xiao's body, accurately avoiding Chu Xiao's body. The power brought by burning qi and blood was limited. At this moment, Do Guangchen's face was already pale and he roared, "Lin Kaiyun! What the hell are you doing? Are you trying to kill Chu Xiao, or are you trying to trick me? I can't hold on any longer. You can play by yourself." As soon as he finished speaking, Do Guangchen stopped burning his qi and blood, but the bloodlight on the dripping blood sword immediately began to dim. Lin Kaiyun gritted his teeth, and the qi and blood around his body also began to burn crazily. However, the bloodlight still brushed past Chu Xiao, and he could only watch as Chu Xiao casually walked in front of him and Do Guangchen. Looking at Chu Xiao, Do Guangchen could not help but tremble when he thought of the power Chu Xiao had displayed when he had defeated Zhong Xian. Just as Do Guangchen was about to say something, Chu Xiao took a step forward and punched. His fist was already in front of Do Guangchen, and there was a violent sonic boom in the air. Along with the sound of the sonic boom, there was also a subtle sound, as if something had shattered. There was silence in the air. Perhaps only the flying blood and minced flesh could prove Do Guangchen's existence. Chapter 589. If someone wants to kill me, then I will kill them. Facing Do Guangchen, Chu Xiao didn't wish to speak any nonsense. However, Everyone who witnessed this scene shuddered violently. This Chu Xiu was truly ruthless. A unity of heaven and man martial artist was actually turned into minced meat with a single punch. Even though Do Guangchen burned his essence blood and overdraft his physical strength, Chu Xiu didn't have much strength left. Yet, Chu Xiu was still able to create such an outcome. It was imaginable how big of a gap there was between both parties. Seeing Do Guangchen being killed, a portion of the Azure Water Sword sect disciples revealed a cowardly expression, but the majority of the disciples were scolding Chu Xiu in grief. No matter what, a disciple of a major sect had to have the spirit and foundation of a major sect's disciple. Although the Azure Water Sword sect wasn't considered a top major sect now, they still had the foundation. They wouldn't be like a rabble that would wail and flee in all directions just because one person was killed. Chu Xiu suddenly sighed. Azure Water Sword sect, I gave you guys a chance. Unfortunately, you guys didn't cherish it. Chu Xiu was speaking the truth. He really gave the Azure Water Sword sect a chance. Back at the Divine Weapon Conference, Shen Bai took the initiative to challenge Chu Xiu, but he was crippled by Chu Xiu. At the beginning, Chu Xiu did want to get rid of the Azure Water Sword sect and get it over with once and for all. But at that time, Chu Xiu had a lot of things to do. Furthermore, the Azure Water Sword sect still had Lu Gong Yuan. It wasn't easy for Chu Xiu to scheme against a martial Dao master. In addition, the Azure Water Sword sect didn't look for trouble with him. Chu Xiu had forgotten about this matter until Chu Xiu's strength improved greatly. In fact, he never thought of looking for trouble with the Azure Water Sword sect. However, he didn't expect that some people would take the initiative to find trouble with him even though he didn't look for trouble with others. In that case, don't blame him for being ruthless. Chu Xiu's fingers flicked gently. It looked like a seal, but it didn't seem to be. However, with the flick of Chu Xiu's finger, a thunderous explosion resounded in the ears of an Azure Water Sword sect disciple. The power vibrated and instantly shattered his heart meridian, causing the three-flower realm martial artist to bleed from all 7 orifices and fall to the ground. As Chu Xiu's fingers constantly flicked, the Azure Water Sword sect's martial artists' heart meridians ruptured one after another. They wailed as they tried to escape, but in the end, none of them managed to escape more than 100 feet. Chu Xiu's strength caused everyone present to suck in a breath of cold air when they saw how easily he killed someone. In fact, this wasn't some profound martial art. It was just a temporary method that Chu Xiu created by combining the lion seal with his spiritual force. It couldn't even be considered a cultivation method, but a method of using power. It was useless against opponents of the same rank or even stronger than him. However, it was used to kill martial artists who were far weaker than him. It was like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. His opponents didn't have any ability to resist. At this moment, Chu Xiu looked at Lin Kaiyun again. Lin Kaiyun's hand trembled, and Bing Shui almost fell to the ground. His face was pale, partly because of the consequences of burning his blood essence, and partly because he was frightened. Looking at Chu Xiu, Lin Kaiyun's expression was even more unbearable. He didn't even resist and just shouted in a fierce tone, "Chu Xiu! You can't kill me! If you kill me, my Sword King city will not rest until you are dead." At this moment, everyone else also saw this scene. Bai Qian's expression suddenly changed as he quickly shouted, "Chu Xiu! Stop!" It was true that Lin Kaiyun had made the first move, but Lin Kaiyun was still a disciple of Sword King City. He could punish Lin Kaiyun, but he could not allow Chu Xiu to kill Lin Kaiyun in public. Feng Qishao also shouted from behind, "Brother Chu! Calm down. Don't be impulsive." Although Lin Kaiyun was on his side, Feng Qishao hated him very much. Given his relationship with Chu Xiu, Feng Qishao naturally wouldn't fall out with Chu Xiu for Lin Kaiyun. He told Chu Xiu to calm down for the sake of Chu Xiu. This matter was Lin Kaiyun's fault. He suddenly went crazy and wanted to kill Chu Xiu on his own. Now that he failed to kill Lin Kaiyun, it would be fine if Chu Xiu wanted to compensate him later. Feng Qishao could even help him deal with the matter. Bai Qian didn't have the habit of helping his relatives and ignoring reason like Sword King City's disciples. It was normal for one to accept punishment after doing something wrong. But now, if Chu Xiu really killed Lin Kaiyun in public, there would be no room for redemption. Sword King City would never tolerate someone killing one of their own disciples in public, especially when the murderer was Lin Kaiyun. He was an elite ranked on the Longhu list, second only to 7th young Master Fong in Sword King City. So as long as Lin Kaiyun didn't die, everything was fine. But Chu Xiu just glanced at Feng Qishao and Bai Qian. He flicked his finger lightly. He didn't have any killing intent, but it gave people a sense of extreme despair. Lin Kaiyun sensed this despair, so he frantically poured the last bit of his qi and blood into the blood-drop sword. He wanted to resist, but Chu Xiu's flicking of his finger directly shattered his heart and arteries. Blood flowed out of his 7 apertures and he fell to the ground with a loud bang, no longer breathing. He resented his sect for more than a decade, resenting his sect's masters for being biased towards Feng Qishao. But in the end, he could only choose to rely on his sect's prestige to save his life before he died. But when someone didn't take this prestige seriously, only death awaited him. Bai Qian and Feng Qishao were still a step too late. Looking at Lin Kaiyun's corpse on the ground, Feng Qishao couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Brother Chu, why did you do this?" He couldn't be bothered to joke around with Chu Xiu at this moment because the matter had become too big. In the past, Chu Xiu only had some enmity with Sword King City. But now, that enmity had turned into enmity, the kind that would only end when one died. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I'm just not used to making simple things complicated. There is so many enmity in the Jianghu, and it's nothing more than me killing people, and others killing me. Now that someone wants to kill me, and even hit me when I'm at my weakest, I naturally have to kill him. Is there even a need to ask why?" Feng Qishao was somewhat speechless. But this was exactly Chu Xiu's style of doing things. Sometimes it was simple and crude to the extreme. Sword King City's style was very overbearing, and he always helped his relatives and not reason. Even if Lin Kaiyun attacked him in front of everyone, would Sword King City cripple Lin Kaiyun to vent Chu Xiu's anger? That was impossible. On the contrary, the enmity between him and Lin Kaiyun would only grow deeper until it reached a point where it couldn't be resolved. At that time, he would have to kill Lin Kaiyun again sooner or later. So, it didn't matter if they killed him sooner or later. Why not settle the matter now? Just like Chu Xiu said, if someone wants to kill me, then I'll kill them. It was a very simple matter, and there was no need to make it complicated. Bai Qian stared fixedly at Chu Xiu and said while gnashing his teeth, "Good, good, good. You, Chu Xiu, really are inspiring. You just defeated Zhongxian, and now you killed a disciple of my Sword King City. Do you really think that no one in Jianghu can stop you?" Although Bai Qian hated Lin Kaiyun for acting on his own initiative to attack Chu Xiu's act of killing Lin Kaiyun in front of so many people was equivalent to slapping Sword King City's face. If Sword King City swallowed this matter, then where would they put their face? 7th young Master Fong frowned at the side and called out, "Chief." Bai Qian turned around and spoke with a solemn expression. "7th young Master, I know you have a good relationship with Chu Xiu, but this matter is related to the reputation of my Sword King City, and it's not something you can control. You can't be willful in this matter." In the past, the teachers of Sword King City doted on Feng Qishao a lot because of Feng Qishao's strength and potential. So even if Feng Qishao did something absurd, it was still worth forgiving. But this matter concerned the reputation of Sword King City, so Feng Qishao couldn't act recklessly. Feng Qishao sighed helplessly when he saw Bai Qian's attitude. It was true that he was usually a little unruly, but that didn't mean he was a fool. He knew about the benefits of the sect, the prestige of his reputation, and all of these things. It was just that he had been too lazy to think about them in the past. Now that the matter had come to this, he couldn't interfere even if he was the most outstanding disciple of Sword King City's younger generation. After all, he was only an outstanding disciple of the younger generation, not the person in charge of Sword King City. When Bai Qian's hand was already on his sword, Guan Siyu rushed over from behind and said in a deep voice, "Hall Master Bai, could it be that you can't help but participate in the fight between the younger generation?" It was true that the Guanzhong torture room was inferior to Sword King City, but they were in public now. Not to mention that Chu Xiu had revealed his terrifying strength and potential. Even if Chu Xiu was just an ordinary cultivator of the Guanzhong torture room, Guan Siyu wouldn't allow Bai Qian to touch him. Bai Qian snorted coldly when he saw Guan Siyu in front of him. He let go of his sword and pulled Feng Qishao away. As Sword King City's Xingzhan Hall's first seat, Bai Qian's strength was considered to be in the upper echelon of many martial Dao masters. However, Bai Qian really didn't have much confidence against Guan Siyu. In fact, Guan Xiyu had always been looked down upon. Many people had dared to attack him when he entered the minor mortal heaven this time. Before Chu Xiu met Guan Xiyu in the Three Pure Palace, Guan Xiyu had already fought with many people. Among them, there was no lack of experts who were much more famous than Guan Xiyu, but the result was that Guan Xiyu had never been defeated. This time, Guan Xiyu had also successfully snatched one Dao accumulation. There were not many people who dared to compete with him. Bai Qian had seen Guan Xiyu fight, and he wasn't confident in winning. He wasn't even confident in staying undefeated. Sword King City's disciple had been easily killed by Chu Xiu of the Guanzhong torture room. If he, Sword King City's Xingjian Hall's first seat, lost to Guan Xiyu as well, then Sword King City would undoubtedly lose even more face. Although Bai Qian didn't say anything ruthless before he left, he gave Guan Xiyu and Chu Xiu a gloomy look. Clearly, he was saying that Sword King City would remember this matter and wouldn't let it go so easily. Chapter 590. The Three Pristines Hall completely collapsed. Those who obtained Dao accumulations and those who didn't, left in a hurry and scattered in all directions. Guan Xiyu walked away with Chu Xiu with a gloomy expression. Then she shouted in a low voice, "Why did you kill Sword King City's people again? Don't you know Lin Kaiyun's identity? Don't you know Sword King City's character? Do you really think they won't do anything to you just because of your relationship with Feng Qishao? Feng Qishao's face isn't that big." To be honest, Guan Xiyu was really driven mad. He was very proud when Chu Xiu defeated Zhong Xian. After all, the Guanzhong torture room finally had a young outstanding talent who could suppress all the outstanding experts of this generation in the underworld. But it didn't last long before Chu Xiu caused such a big trouble and formed a deadly enmity with Sword King City. It turned out that Chu Xiu's strength was directly proportional to his ability to cause trouble. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Lin Kaiyun wanted to kill me, so what's wrong with me killing him? Since some people want to court death, then I'll fulfill their wish. If I were to endure it just because the other party is from Sword King City, then I'm afraid I'll be plotted against a second time. Retreating for a moment is a good thing, but enduring for a moment isn't necessarily a good thing. There are so many enmities and killings in the underworld, so many people wouldn't have died if I only revealed my background. Besides, although the Guanzhong torture room isn't overbearing, it's not excessively compromising, isn't it?" Guan Xiyu snorted coldly and said, "You have so many excuses now. Why didn't you think about it when you killed people just now?" What Chu Xiu said was the truth. Although the Guanzhong torture room had been enduring and low-key, it had never compromised. In the past, Chu Kuanga was known as the great hero. He had been chivalrous and helped the needy, saving countless lives. But at the same time, Chu Kuanga had never backed down in the face of threats from various enemies. There was even a rumor that Chu Kuanga never spoke of fighting with his life on the line, but once he made a move, he carried an aura of a life-and-death struggle, as if he didn't care about his life. Although Guan Xiyu wasn't as extreme as Chu Kuanga, Guan Xiyu was also very strong-willed in the past. She had never chosen to concede in the face of foreign enemies, but now she was very low-key. Guan Xiyu felt a headache coming on as she looked at Chu Xiu. It was a good thing that Chu Xiu was strong and talented, but his ability to cause trouble was already too much for Guan Xiyu to handle. The Guanzhong torture room could not withstand Chu Xiu's torment. At this time, Chu Xiu said, "Hallmaster, actually, you don't have to worry. Sword King City is strong in appearance but weak in heart. They won't cause trouble for us in a short period of time." Sword King City also suffered a lot during the righteous and demonic battles on Floating Jade Mountain. It is even said that the true fire spirit refinement realm expert of Sword King City, Duga Li, was seriously injured. So, Sword King City won't make any big movements during this period of time. Moreover, everyone in Jianghu knows who was in the wrong. It was Sword King City's people who attacked first and even hit us when we were down. Although this kind of thing is normal, it's not good to say it. So, even if Sword King City wants to take revenge, it won't come so quickly. At least, they have to wait for the news to die down before they take revenge. Guan Xiyu frowned and nodded. "Be careful and don't be too optimistic. The Xiaofan heaven will end in 2 days. During this period of time, you will stay by my side and don't run around." Guan Xiyu was truly afraid. Chu Xiu's ability to cause trouble was too strong. If she didn't keep an eye on Chu Xiu might cause trouble again. "All right, There is also the matter with the Azure Wave Sword Sect. It is fine that you killed Do Guangchen, but don't provoke the Azure Wave Sword Sect again. I reckon that the Azure Wave Sword Sect won't make a move on you. Lu Gongyuan is a smart person. Even if he hates you, he won't go to the extreme without absolute certainty. Chu Xiu nodded, but his eyes had a trace of disapproval. According to his character, since he killed Do Guangchen, he didn't mind eliminating the Azure Wave Sword Sect along the way, to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. But now that Guan Xiyu had spoken, if he still brought people to eliminate the Azure Wave Sword Sect, it would be a bit too much. It was likely that he would directly fall out with Guan Xiyu. Therefore, the grudge between him and the Azure Wave Sword Sect had to be considered at length. At this moment, Chu Xiu really hoped that Lu Gongyuan would be overwhelmed by anger and take the initiative to attack him. That way, he would have a reason to eliminate the Azure Wave Sword Sect. For the next 2 days, Chu Xiu had been wandering around the Xiaofan heaven with Guan Xiyu. Because there were only 2 days left, and the surrounding ruins had been explored, it was too late to go further. Therefore, for these 2 days, Chu Xiu and Guan Xiyu spent most of their time picking herbs, cultivating, and so on. After 2 days, Chu Xiu felt the surrounding space was distorted. A force was repelling him and finally sent him and Guan Xiyu to the outside world. The crowd outside the Xiaofan heaven was even more crowded than when the Xiaofan heaven opened. When the Xiaofan heaven opened, apart from the disciples of the major sects who could use various secret techniques to rush over, even if the others knew of the news, they wouldn't dare to come to the Wei County so quickly. Therefore, most of the people outside were martial artists and factions from the Wei County. But now that 10 days had passed, the number of people who came from all over the world of martial arts to watch the show was 10 times more than before. After walking out of the Xiaofan heaven, Guan Xiyu looked around but didn't see Liuyan's figure, which made Guan Xiyu's heart skip a beat. The rules in the Xiaofan heaven were mandatory. Once you entered, you would be forcefully expelled once the time was up. Even a true fire spirit refinement realm expert wouldn't be able to withstand it. Of course, a true fire spirit refinement realm expert wouldn't even be able to move after entering, let alone resist the power of the rules. Now that the Xiaofan heaven had ended, Liuyan would almost certainly be thrown out of the Xiaofan heaven. However, she didn't see any trace of Liuyan. Needless to say, Liuyan was probably dead. Although Liuyan and Guan Xiyu had never been on the same side, as long as Liuyan was on the same side as the Guanzhong torture room, he would be useful to the Guanzhong torture room. Now that Liuyan was dead, the Guanzhong torture room had lost the combat power of a grandmaster. To the Guanzhong torture room, entering the Xiaofan heaven was undoubtedly a loss. The most important thing was that Guan Xiyu couldn't even find out who the murderer was. Although the Guanzhong torture room was best at this kind of thing, they had to at least have some clues. However, now that the Xiaofan heaven was closed, they couldn't find any clues at all. If they wanted to investigate, they would have to wait for 30 years when the Xiaofan heaven opened again. After the crowd dispersed, Chu Xiu followed Guan Xiyu back to the Guanzhong torture room. Lu Fengxian's 4 subordinates were still in the Guanzhong torture room, so he naturally had to follow Chu Xiu back to the Guanzhong torture room first. However, Lu Fengxian didn't plan to stay in the Guanzhong torture room for long. He had just stepped into the oneness of heaven and man realm and was ready to go out and explore to stabilize his realm. Most people would choose to go into seclusion to stabilize their realm. However, for people like Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, whose martial arts were more fierce and overbearing, it was faster to stabilize their realm in battle. "Brother Lu, where are you going?" Lu Fengxian carried his halberd and said, "Luo Feiheng is now managing the 9-branch hall and it's developing well. However, she obtained a part of the opportunity in the Xiaofan heaven and is preparing to go into seclusion for a period of time. So there's no one to look after the 9-branch hall for the time being. You definitely don't have time to manage it, so she asked me to help her manage it for a while and solve some problems." At this point, Lu Fengxian took out a secret box and handed it to Chu Xiu. "Brother Chu, this is a gift for you. I found it in the Black Demon Tower. I believe you will definitely need it." After she finished speaking, LV Fengxian bid her farewells and left with Shui Wuxiang and the others. Chu Xiu looked at the secret box doubtfully. He was very curious about what gift Lu Fengxian would give him. Lu Fengxian had a calm personality and didn't like to joke around. Since he gave a gift to Chu Xiu, it must be something very useful to Chu Xiu. Opening the secret box, an ancient book made of leather appeared in front of Chu Xiu. Seeing the familiar material, Chu Xiu knew what it was without even flipping through it. This thing was one of the 7 volumes of the great sorrowful poem of Yin and Yang. In fact, Chu Xiu's trip to the Xiaofan heaven this time was to gather the great sorrowful poem of Yin and Yang. Mei Qinglian had said that the source of the great sorrowful poem of Yin and Yang was in the Xiaofan heaven. However, even though that was the case, Chu Xiu did not really expect to be able to gather all of the sorrowful Yin and Yang poetry of heaven and earth. After all, the Xiaofan heaven had been open for a long time. Countless warriors had entered the Xiaofan heaven, but most of them only brought out one great sorrowful poem. It would be very difficult for him to gather all of them. However, Chu Xiu didn't expect Lu Fengxian to give him a surprise. She was indeed a person blessed with luck. Opening the leather book, there were a few big words written in evil characters. Heaven punishing earth exterminating immortal godly finger. This great sorrowful poem was actually a rare finger technique. This really surprised Chu Xiu. After Chu Xiu flipped through the heaven punishing earth exterminating immortal godly finger, Chu Xiu let out a long sigh. It was indeed a standard martial technique of the great sorrowful poem. It was evil and ruthless, but at the same time, it was extremely overbearing. Whether this immortal godly finger could really kill immortals, Chu Xiu didn't know. However, its power could be said to be terrifying. With a point of the finger, all the internal force would be integrated into a point. Under the immortal godly finger, all the internal force gang qi would be transformed into an extreme death qi. At the same time, this immortal godly finger actually required the user to be proficient in the primordial spirit secret technique. When using it, one had to transform the mental strength into boundless death qi to destroy the spirit of the primordial spirit. With this point of the finger, what was taken away was vitality. The physical body and spirit would wither at the same time. Even immortals with longevity would have their qualifications to live forever taken away by this finger. Chapter 591. The 6 Gates of Great Compassion poem had been gathered, but there was still no news about the last one. However, Chu Xiu was not discouraged. This kind of thing depended on luck, and it was not something that could be forced. Just like this time, he was unlucky and did not get it, but the lucky Lu Fengxian got it. However, to Chu Xiu, it could be counted as his luck. After the Xiaofan heaven ended, there was nothing to do in the outside world. So Chu Xiu prepared to cultivate in seclusion for a period of time. Chu Xiu needed time to refine the Taoist connotation that he had obtained in the Xiaofan heaven. He had also accumulated a lot of insights and experience from fighting with Zhong Xian and Zhang Qingzhen, and he also needed time to digest them. Of course, there was also the divine finger of heaven and earth annihilation that Lu Fengxian had given him. Chu Xiu also needed some time to practice it. During the time when Chu Xiu was cultivating in seclusion, there were countless waves in the outside world. The Xiaofan heaven opened every 30 years, and it was about the time when the younger generation of the Jianghu began to change. However, the changes that the Xiaofan heaven had on the younger generation of the Jianghu this time seemed to be a little big. Among them, the most widely spread news was that Zhang Qingzhen had fought against 5 top talents of the younger generation and stepped into the martial arts master realm. Although everyone knew that Zhang Qingzhen would step into the martial arts master realm sooner or later, no one expected that Zhang Qingzhen would use such a shocking method to step into the martial arts master realm and condense the Thunder Golden Core. It could be said that it was a brilliant feat after stepping into the martial arts master realm. Zhang Qingzhen naturally could not stay on the Longhu list anymore. However, he was immediately promoted to the 34th place by Wind Sweeping Tower. Just out of the Longhu list, he immediately occupied a place on the list. Even in the history of Wind Sweeping Tower, there were not many people who could do that. Moreover, Zhang Qingzhen's ranking was not low. He was ranked 34th, even higher than Yan Huainan of the Divine Force School. Above him was Chang Tingshan of the Undistracted Sword Tomb, the master of the Hidden Sword Villa. Although there were some martial Dao grandmasters who were dissatisfied with Zhang Qingzhen's high ranking as soon as he stepped into the Grandmaster realm, they thought that Windman Lu was sucking up to the Celestial Master Mansion. However, those who had entered Xiaofanshan and seen Zhang Qingzhen fight would not think so. Those who could condense the Thunder Gold Core were not weak. Zhang Qingzhen's performance when he was in the oneness of heaven and men realm was shocking enough. At present, Zhang Qingzhen had not fought since he became a guru. Many people wanted to see the power of the Thunder Gold Core, but few wanted to try it in person. Now that Zhang Qingjin had left the Dragon and Tiger ranking and was ranked on the Wind and Cloud ranking, there was a lot of speculation about who would become the first on the Dragon and Tiger ranking. Wind Man Lu did not keep everyone in suspense and immediately released the new Dragon and Tiger ranking. The first on the list was Chu Xiao. Although most people already had a guess about this result, they still felt it was unbelievable to see Chu Xiao surpass Zhong Xian and become the new first on the Dragon and Tiger ranking. Zhong Xian and Zhang Qingjin had been fighting for a long time. Everyone knew that the Taoist and Buddhist sects had produced two monsters. In any case, these two people were either first or second. It would be good if they could look at third place. However, the result was unexpected. Chu Xiao appeared out of nowhere and defeated Zhong Xian in front of everyone, becoming the first on the Dragon and Tiger ranking. This matter had a certain impact on the Great Light Temple's reputation. When Zhang Qingjin was still around, Zhong Xian was second. Now that Zhang Qingjin had left, Zhong Xian was still second. This was enough to explain the problem. Hearing this news, many disciples of the Great Light Temple were dissatisfied and clamored for Wind Man Lu to change the ranking. However, they were all suppressed by the masters of the Great Light Temple. Was it not embarrassing enough? Zhong Xian actually had the strength to fight again in the battle at the Three Pristines Temple. However, everyone had seen him vomit blood after being attacked by Chu Xiao's 9 seals into one. This could not be refuted. On the Dragon and Tiger ranking, other than Chu Xiao who was first and Zhong Xian who was still second, the ranking behind him had changed a lot. Among them, the third was Lin Yi of the Hidden Devil clan. In Xiaofan Heaven, Chu Xiao had used Lin Ye's identity to kill many people for the convenience of doing things. These achievements were extremely shocking to the outside world. Disregarding everything else, just the fact that Chu Xiao had used Lin Ye's identity to severely injure Su Xing and kill Zhen Yongzi was enough to shock the underworld. Feng Qishao was not weak either. However, he did not have such shocking achievements as Lin Ye's identity. Therefore, he was directly pushed down to 4th place. The 5th place was Li Feilian. Although Li Feilian did not attack many times, Chu Xiao would not have been able to kill Zhen Yongzi without his flying daggers. Moreover, during the battle with Zhang Qingjin, Li Feilian's flying daggers even made Zhang Qingjin wary. One could imagine how great the threat of Li Feilian was. Li Feilian became 5th while Ying Bailu was pushed down to 6th place, falling out of the top 5. In fact, Ying Bailu's performance in Xiaofan Heaven was not weak, especially in the battle with Zhang Qingjin. Everyone could see Ying Bailu's strength. However, compared to the dazzling performance of the others, Ying Bailu's performance could only be considered mediocre unless he killed a few martial Dao masters to prove his strength. Many women in the underworld were dissatisfied with Ying Bailu's being pushed out of the Dragon and Tiger ranking. They complained that Li Feilian did not attack many times, so why was he ranked above Ying Bailu? However, Wind Sweeping Tower did not care about these words at all. Ying Bailu himself did not say anything. So what were you women so anxious about? The last person to change on the Dragon and Tiger ranking was Lu Fengxian. He rose 3 places in a row and became 7th on the Dragon and Tiger ranking, second only to Ying Bailu. Compared to the others, Lu Fengxian's performance was not bad. He was someone who had withstood dozens of attacks from Zhong Xian and even used the demon god's unparalleled halberd and the unparalleled divine weapon to push Zhong Xian back. This performance was usually very strong, but unfortunately, compared to Chu Xiao and the others, it was slightly inferior. As soon as this ranking was released, it immediately caused a lot of discussion in the underworld. Of course, the most discussed topic was Chu Xiao and Lin Yi. Most of the martial artists who ranked first on the Dragon and Tiger ranking were from top sections. Chu Xiao was one of the few people who came from a humble background to rank first on the Dragon and Tiger ranking. Moreover, this generation's Dragon and Tiger ranking could be said to be the strongest in the history of the Dragon and Tiger ranking. There were many experts and countless talents. Not to mention Zhang Qingjin and Chu Xiao, Zhong Xian and Feng Qi's strength were enough to rank first in the previous Dragon and Tiger ranking or the one before that. The main reason why Lin Yi caused the discussion was because of his identity. His identity as a member of the Yinma clan. The revival of the diabolism had long been felt by the righteous Jianghu. However, the entire righteous Jianghu was not a monolithic block, and there was no such thing as a Wulin leader. Before the diabolism developed to a certain extent, even if everyone was afraid, they would not join forces. After the great battle on Floating Jade Mountain, diabolism had completely revealed its fangs. It was a sign that diabolism was no longer satisfied with hiding in the dark, and was ready to surface. The 5 major sword sects could be considered as a coincidence. They had originally planned to use diabolism to strengthen their reputation, but they did not expect to draw out diabolism's true strength. Now that Lin Yi was ranked 3rd on the Dragon and Tiger ranking, it was a very good proof. Previously, this person was not well known, as if he jumped out from a crack in a rock. As a result, he amazed the world with a single brilliant feat and entered the top 20 of the Dragon and Tiger ranking. In the minor mortal heaven, he was even a grandmaster of array slaying. He surpassed many of the younger generation's talents and was ranked 3rd on the Dragon and Tiger ranking. If a young man from the Yinma clan had such strength, who knew what other hidden experts were in the Yinma clan? Not to mention the Yinma clan, just the strength of the moon-worshipping cult was enough to make many righteous sects apprehensive. Of course, these things were only considered by some of the major sections. As for some of the smaller sects and rogue martial artists, they were more concerned about the underworld's gossip. At this moment, in the Azure Water Sword sect's rear mountain in Wei County, Lu Gongyuan stood in front of the cliff. His complexion was old, as if he had aged more than 10 years in an instant, becoming an old man with 1 foot in the grave. Within the sect, one could still vaguely hear the disciples crying and cursing, but Lu Gongyuan acted as if he didn't hear it. In the minor mortal heaven, all the Azure Water Sword sect disciples died in battle. None of them survived. This was a huge blow to the Azure Water Sword sect. Do Guangchen didn't listen to advice and insisted on entering the minor mortal heaven. As a result, more than half of the Azure Water Sword sect's disciples died. Lu Gongyuan didn't know if he should be angry or sad. But even if he was angry now, it was useless. His Azure Water Sword sect's greatest enemy was no longer the same as before. Defeating Zhongxian and ranked 1st on the Dragon and Tiger ranking, Chu Xiu's strength had already surpassed many martial Dao masters. With his old body, even if he fought with his life on the line, he didn't have much confidence. Hence, Lu Gongyuan didn't care about the group of disciples in the sect who were clamoring for revenge. Even though he hated Chu Xiu to the extreme, Lu Gongyuan didn't even scold him. Looking at Shen Bai's seclusion, Lu Gongyuan let out a deep sigh. This was his Azure Water Sword sect's last hope. He would guard it until his qi and blood deteriorated and he was on the verge of death. If Shen Bai didn't come out of seclusion by then, Lu Gongyuan was prepared to burn his last trace of vitality and fight with Chu Xiu. At that time, the Azure Water Sword sect would truly be at its end. It didn't matter if he lived for a period of time or fought with Chu Xiu. In fact, there were many people who criticized the Azure Water Sword sect in the pugilistic world. They all thought that the Azure Water Sword sect had declined to such an extent that it wasn't worthy to be one of the 7 sects and 8 factions. But Lu Gongyuan was still a famous senior in the pugilistic world. He still had some prestige and connections. The others didn't want to go overboard. Therefore, the wind-sweeping building didn't change the ranking of the 7 sects and 8 factions. After standing on the cliff for a while, Lu Gongyuan felt that the voices in the sect were much quieter. He then walked down the back mountain. But after Lu Gongyuan walked down the back mountain, there was a subtle sword chime coming from Shen Bai's seclusion. It might be very soft, but it lingered in the air and didn't dissipate. Chapter 592. The aftermath did not disturb Chu Xiu. At this time, he was still cultivating in seclusion in the Guanxi land. What this seclusion brought to Chu Xiu was not the improvement of his strength. The most important thing was the enlightenment. Some of the fighting experience with Zhongxian and Zhang Chengzhen, as well as the divine finger of heaven and earth annihilation, were easy to digest. In fact, the most difficult thing to digest was the Taoist connotation. The Taoist connotation contained the purest way of heaven and earth. It condensed illusory things into entities. It had to be said that the strength of the 3 Pristines temple in ancient times was really strong. It was even strong enough to make people tremble. It could be seen from the attitude of the 3 Pristines temple. They casually threw out 9 Taoist connotations, as if the Taoist connotation was at their fingertips. Chu Xiu had been cultivating in seclusion for nearly a month. He had comprehended the Taoist connotation for more than 20 days, but he still did not gain anything. Moreover, Chu Xiu thought that his comprehension was already very good. In the end, he still could not understand the Taoist connotation. Could it be that the attribute of the Taoist connotation was incompatible with his? After thinking about it carefully, it was really possible. Taoism emphasized purity and inaction. If the requirement to understand the Taoist connotation was that Chu Xiu had to maintain such a state of mind, he would probably not be able to understand the Taoist connotation in his life. At this moment, in the secret room of Chu Xiu's seclusion, the black fog of devil qi filled the air. The figure of Mei Qinglian walked out of it. Chu Xiu knew that Mei Qinglian did not have the habit of knocking on the door in advance. Therefore, this time, he wore clothes in seclusion. Mei Qinglian's beautiful eyes were full of emotions. She stared at Chu Xiu without blinking. Her gaze made Chu Xiu feel a little scared. "I say, Your Highness, why are you looking at me like that?" Mei Qinglian chuckled and said, "Of course I'm looking at a genius that only appears in the history of Jianghu in 10,000 years. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Zhang Qingzhen is a genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. I'm too embarrassed to say something like 10,000 years. Mei Qinglian extended her jade-like finger and poked Chu Xiu a few times. "You don't have to be humble. Your strangeness is different from Zhang Qingzhen's strangeness." If outsiders were to find out that the first and third on the Longhu leaderboard are the same person, the entire pugilistic world would be in an uproar. It can even be said that you played the entire Jianghu by yourself. SSK, if you're not a genius, then who is? Chu Xiu was stunned. Lin Yi is ranked third on the Longhu leaderboard? Chu Xiu was not surprised that he was able to obtain the first place on the Longhu list. After all, he had defeated Zhongxian in public. However, he did not expect Lin Yi to be ranked third on the Longhu leaderboard. After all, when he used the identity of Lin Yi, he mostly used the Seven Demon Saber to kill people. Su Xing was severely injured by the Seven Demon Saber, and Zhen Yongzi was also killed by the Seven Demon Saber. In addition, he was from the Diabolism, so it was inevitable that Wind Sweeping Tower would suppress him in the rankings. They thought that he had used external objects to achieve his current strength, so they lowered his ranking. However, Chu Xiu did not expect Wind Sweeping Tower to be so fair this time. Mei Qinglian said, "Actually, Wind Sweeping Tower is quite fair. They are not a righteous sect, but they can't openly stand on the side of the Diabolism. This time, maybe Zhang Qingzhen caused too much of a commotion, or maybe the righteous sects have realized that the rise of the Diabolism is unstoppable, so they did not pressure Wind Sweeping Tower to tamper with the leaderboard. This is a good thing. The more famous you are in the Diabolism, the more convenient it is for you to do things in the Diabolism." Just as Chu Xiu was about to ask Mei Qinglian what she meant by convenient, Mei Qinglian's expression suddenly turned solemn. "You killed An Lionian?" Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. "Is it that obvious? Did Mr. Liu tell you?" Mei Qinglian lightly snorted and said, "I already guessed it before that brat Lu Jin told me. An Lionian is not an idiot. He is considered a veteran in the pugilistic world. Even if he had entered the Xiaofan realm, he would not have killed himself so carelessly. Furthermore, he would have died so silently. Moreover, An Lionian has been keeping a low profile all these years, basically staying in seclusion in the Guanzhong torture room. Apart from you, I can't think of anyone else who would have a reason to kill him." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "We should have gotten rid of such an obstacle long ago. Saintess, you have been scheming in the Guanzhong torture room for so long, but aren't you a little too slow? If I hadn't made a move, it would not have been so easy for us to occupy the Guanzhong torture room with An Lionian around." Mei Qinglian frowned and snorted coldly. "You've become so arrogant after becoming number one on the Longhu leaderboard, and you still think that I'm too slow? The Diabolism has always been keeping a low profile, let alone my hidden devil lineage. If I move too fast, the righteous sects will notice some clues, and it is hard to guarantee that they will not interfere. Now, both the bright devil lineage and my hidden devil lineage have decided to make some noise. Even if you don't make a move, I will have to consider this matter." Chu Xiu laughed. If he remembered correctly, when he had suggested getting rid of An Lionian, Mei Qinglian had been wary of Guan Siyu. However, Chu Xiu did not expose this prideful woman. His expression turned serious as he said, "Saintess, since An Lionian is already dead, it is only a matter of time before my Diabolism takes control of the Guanzhong torture room. Therefore I would like to ask, if we really occupy the Guanzhong torture room one day, whose Guanzhong torture room will belong to? Yours? Mine? or the entire hidden devil lineage? This was a very sensitive matter, but Chu Xiao had never mentioned it before. Mei Qinglian was Mei Qinglian, he was him, and the hidden devil lineage was the entire hidden devil lineage. Both parties were related to each other, but they were also independent. The distribution of power after the matter was a very important matter. In the past, Chu Xiao was not strong enough, so he had no right to say these things. However, now that Chu Xiao was ranked first on the Longhu leaderboard, Chu Xiao and Lin Ye's identities combined, they could even rival some famous martial arts masters in the pugilistic world. Even without any background, Chu Xiao was not afraid of anyone. Therefore, he had the right to say this to Mei Qinglian face to face. Mei Qinglian took a deep look at Chu Xiao and said, "You are quite direct, but this is also good. If we make things clear in advance, then we will not be like those hypocritical righteous sections. They are brothers on the surface, but have endless internal strife. You don't have to worry about the hidden devil lineage, they will not want what you have fought for yourself. The hidden devil lineage is not a sect. To be precise, it is just an alliance. Everyone has their own forces, and they are united for the same goal. Therefore, although you can't get various resources and preferential treatment like those sects, you don't have to worry about any unfair or dirty things. Right now, the hidden devil lineage is only overseen by Senior Wei Shuya and a few other very senior demonic seniors. Unless there is a matter like the previous battle on Mount Fuyu that concerns the honor of the entire demonic path, the hidden devil lineage will not easily gather." After saying this, Mei Qinglian looked straight at Chu Xiao. A strange rhythm was emitted silently, provoking Chu Xiao's nerves. Mei Qinglian spoke slowly, but her voice was like a whisper. "As for you and me, I am not sure. Can I trust you now?" How powerful was Chu Xiao's spiritual power? It had even reached a point where it was stronger than most martial arts grandmasters. When the inner demon rotation technique was used, Chu Xiao's spiritual power was like a whirlpool, completely dispersing the rhythm. Raising his eyebrows, Chu Xiao said indifferently, "The Yin demon sex beauty technique is indeed extraordinary, but Saintess, you don't have to do this in front of me, do you? Are you afraid that I won't tell the truth?" Mei Qinglian said with a solemn expression, "I am not joking, I am serious. Chu Xiao, I can't see through you anymore. Actually, what I want is very simple. It is nothing more than the Yin demon sex reputation and inheritance. Previously, you laughed at me for not making any progress after hiding in the Guanzhong torture room for so long. I admit that this has nothing to do with the situation of the demonic path. It is just that I am not good at such things, so I have been a bit indecisive on some decisions and missed many good opportunities. When the Yin demon sect was still around, I was the saintess. There was a sect master above me, and a large number of disciples below me. I did not need to worry about these things, nor did I need to worry about them. Now, I am the only one left in the Yin demon sect. I do not dream of rebuilding the Yin demon sect with my own strength, but I want to leave behind an inheritance for the future of the Yin demon sect. That kid Lu Jin helped you so selflessly in order to form a good relationship with you, so that you can join forces with the phaseless demon sect in the future. I can help you now, and even help you take the entire Guanzhong torture room in your hands. Can you help me rebuild the Yin demon sect in the hidden demon sect? It does not need to be too powerful, just a reputation and an inheritance." Mei Qinglian stared at Chu Xiao. Her goal had always been very simple, but she did not know Chu Xiao's thoughts. This was also the reason why Mei Qinglian could not completely trust Chu Xiao. Mei Qinglian did have the strength, but she had been hiding beside Guan Xiyu for so many years, yet she did not manage to build much power. She did not even manage in Liaonian. This was enough to prove that Mei Qinglian was not good at things like tactics. It was extremely difficult to rebuild a sect. A person and a sect with an inheritance were two different concepts. Mei Qinglian could live well by herself, but she did not have the ability to rebuild and manage a sect, nor did she have the ability to deal with all aspects. Supporting a person with ability was a very good choice. Mei Qinglian did not need to control a sect, she only needed to control a person. Chu Xiao was once such a candidate. However, as Chu Xiao became stronger and stronger, and even his power in the Guanzhong torture room caught up, the current Chu Xiao was completely qualified to be on equal footing with Mei Qinglian. Therefore, Mei Qinglian no longer thought of controlling Chu Xiao. She only wanted to cooperate. At this time, it was Mei Qinglian's turn to be more cautious. This was because she was not sure whether it was a blessing or a curse to cooperate with a person like Chu Xiao, whose thoughts were so deep that no one could guess his bottom line. Chapter 593. Actually, Chu Xiao already had some guesses about Mei Qinglian's goal. And after hearing Mr. Liu talk about Mei Qinglian's life experience, he could roughly guess that everything Mei Qinglian did was for her former sect, the Yin Demon sect. Even if Mei Qinglian did not want to be a sect master and only wanted to be a saintess, she was the only one left in the Yin Demon sect. This burden had to be borne by Mei Qinglian. This request was not excessive in Chu Xiao's eyes. Mei Qinglian actually had no interest in power from the beginning. This could be seen from the way she addressed him. Now that the Yin Demon sect only had Mei Qinglian left, she should normally say that she was the sect master. But in reality, whether it was Chu Xiao or Mr. Liu, she had asked them to address her as saintess. Therefore, Mei Qinglian actually wanted to be a saintess from the bottom of her heart. Chu Xiao also looked at Mei Qinglian and said in a deep voice, "Saintess, you have been in the pugilistic world for so many years. You should know that things like promises are unreliable, regardless of whether they are good or evil." Mei Qinglian slightly raised her eyebrows. At this time, shouldn't Chu Xiao say that she was reliable? He actually said the opposite. "You mean that the promises of others are unreliable, and the promises of you, Chu Xiao, are also unreliable? Didn't you always say that you are trustworthy?" Chu Xiao casually waved his hand and said, "Keeping promises also depends on the occasion. In the face of benefits, any promises are unreliable. If there are benefits for me to stand with saintess, then I can naturally be relied on. On the other hand, if there are no benefits, why should I harm saintess?" In the Hidden Devil clan, although the Yin Demon sect only exists in name, their connections are still there. If I harm you, Lady Holy Maiden, I will definitely not have a place in the Hidden Devil clan. Furthermore, after experiencing the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths on Floating Jade Mountain, the people of the Yinma clan should know that I was supported by the saintess and Mr. Liu. If I were to harm the saintess, that would be repaying kindness with enmity, and that would be heartless and unjust. Even if they were from the demonic Tao, they could be ruthless to outsiders and disregard morality. But when it came to their own people, they believed that no one would be willing to work together with a villain who repaid kindness with enmity. In the face of benefits, I will only stand with you, saintess. I will not choose to harm you. So, saintess, you don't have to choose to believe in me. You just need to choose to believe in the benefits. That's enough." Hearing Chu Xiao say so much, Mei Qinglian could not help but snort softly. She said, "Chu Xiao, your sophistry is not inferior to your strength." Although Mei Qinglian said that Chu Xiao was sophistry, she could not help but agree with Chu Xiao's view. Harming her would not benefit Chu Xiao. Unless Chu Xiao was an idiot who was used to harming others to his own detriment, there was no reason for him to harm her. Chu Xiao said indifferently, "This is not sophistry, but the truth. Saintess, what do you plan to do with Guan Siyu for now?" Chu Xiao vaguely remembered that in the original plot, there seemed to be a huge change in the Guanzhong torture room. Could this huge change be related to Mei Qinglian? Chu Xiao carefully recalled the plot. He wanted to see if Guan Siyu had died in this huge change and if he would be affected by the butterfly effect again. But as he thought about it, Chu Xiao's expression suddenly changed and became very ugly. This was because he could not remember any details about the plot. When he had decided to join the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiao had specially noted down a few major events in the Guanzhong torture room. But now, Chu Xiao could not remember them at all. This kind of thing was very normal for ordinary people. There were so many things, who could remember all of them, big or small? But when it happened to Chu Xiao, this kind of thing could be said to be strange, extremely strange. One had to know that Chu Xiao had already reached the realm of the unity of heaven and man. Although he did not have a photographic memory, it was not bad. At the very least, with the support of his powerful mental strength, his memory was dozens or even hundreds of times better than ordinary people. He had been in the Guanzhong torture room, and he would never forget the memory of the Guanzhong torture room. However, the fact was that he had indeed forgotten it. He had completely forgotten it, and he could not remember it no matter how hard he tried. But this was not the most terrifying thing. Chu Xiao also tried to recall other familiar plots just now, but he was shocked to find that most of the plots had become very vague. He remembered a certain time and place that a major event would happen, but he could not remember the specific details of that event, especially those related to people. With Chu Xiu's memory, this was absolutely impossible, especially when it was related to the original plot. These were Chu Xiu's trump cards, and the place where Chu Xiu settled down. He could forget everything else, but he could not forget these. But now he had forgotten it. Chu Xiu was sure that there was definitely a problem with him. Moreover, Chu Xiu carefully combed through his memories. Except for some memories about the original plot, he could not even remember some of the memories before his rebirth. But his memories of this life were very clear in his mind, which was very unreasonable. Now, Chu Xiu's thoughts were mainly based on the thoughts of Chu Xiu's previous life, not this life. So even if his memories were vague, they should be vague memories of this life. Why were such important memories of his previous life blurred? Mei Qinglian was just about to speak when she saw that Chu Xiu had fallen into this state of sluggishness, or even a dazed state. She could not help but ask, "Chu Xiu, what's wrong with you? What are you thinking about? Why are you so obsessed?" Chu Xiu was awakened by Mei Qinglian's words. He said to Mei Qinglian in a deep voice, "Saintess, please use the Qinnu Great Technique to check my spirit and primordial spirit to see if there are any abnormalities." In the Jianghu, Chu Xiu rarely fought with people who were also proficient in primordial spirit secret techniques. Therefore, the possibility of him being seriously injured by primordial spirit secret techniques or being secretly plotted against was very small. However, he still had to wait for Mei Qinglian to check before he could make a decision. The Qinnu Great Technique of the Yin Demon Sect was not considered a primordial spirit secret technique, but its power in primordial spirit was even more terrifying than that of martial artists who specialized in this path. Mei Qinglian said in surprise, "You were plotted against by someone in Xiaofan with a primordial spirit secret technique?" Mei Qinglian knew that Chu Xiu's attainments in primordial spirit mental power were definitely far greater than most martial Dao masters, and even similar to her. If someone silently left a hidden injury on Chu Xiu's primordial spirit, how terrifying would this person's cultivation be? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I'm not sure either, so I wanted to let the saintess check to confirm it." As he spoke, Chu Xiu took the initiative to open his mind and let Mei Qinglian use the Qinnu Great Technique to check. Mei Qinglian nodded, and a rhythm bloomed out, seeping into Chu Xiu's mind. After a while, Mei Qinglian shook her head and said, "Your primordial spirit is very strong. There is no damage at all. There is no problem. Of course, there is also the possibility that someone buried the hidden danger in the deepest part of your primordial spirit. However, even with my strength, I couldn't detect it. That person's strength is definitely not a martial Dao master, but a true fire spirit refinement expert who specializes in mental power." Chu Xiu frowned. If that was the case, then it would be really troublesome. He was sure that there was definitely something wrong with his current state, but he couldn't find what was wrong. In fact, the blurred memory of the original plot was not that bad for Chu Xiu now. Chu Xiu had influenced too many things in the past few years, which also led to most things related to people having a butterfly effect under the influence of Chu Xiu. In the original plot, the Guanzhong torture room suffered a great change, and no one knew whether that great change would happen again or not. However, this matter was like a dark cloud, shrouding Chu Xiu's heart for a while. A powerful existence was actually not scary. What was really scary was the unknown. Mei Qinglian waved her hand casually and said, "Okay, don't think about these things. Are you under too much pressure in Xiaofan? Have you not recovered yet? You have finished your closed-door training here. Senior Wei Shuya wants you to go. He has a good thing for you." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Good thing? What good thing? Don't ask so much. You'll know when you get there." With that, Mei Qinglian pulled Chu Xiu away. Chu Xiu said in surprise, "You're going too? How are you going to explain Guan Siyu?" Mei Qinglian waved her hand casually and said, "You don't have to worry about me. I have my own way of dealing with Guan Siyu." Hearing Mei Qinglian say this, Chu Xiu didn't ask any more questions. He concealed his aura and followed Mei Qinglian out of Guanxi. They arrived at the border between Guanxi and West Chu. Late at night, Mei Qinglian brought Chu Xiu to a large house. A wisp of aura bloomed, and the door immediately opened. Mr. Lu walked out. Seeing Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian, Mr. Lu nodded and said, Senior Wei has been waiting for you for a long time. Come in. This house was just an ordinary merchant's house in name. The owner and servants inside were all ordinary people. However, when they saw Chu Xiao and the others walk over, it was as if they were looking at air. They weren't surprised at all and ignored them. Mr. Liu opened a secret door and brought Chu Xiao and Mei Qinglian underground. There was a world underground in this house, and it was even larger than the surface. At this moment, in a large hall underground, Wei Shuya was holding a cup of tea with his eyes closed, as if he was going to fall asleep at any moment. With his old appearance, no one would think that he was an expert at the peak of the true fire spirit refinement realm. Beside him was Chu Wuji. Chu Wuji didn't sit properly. He crossed his legs and played with a nimble white-browed parrot in his hand. When he saw Mei Qinglian come in, the white-browed parrot immediately shouted in a sharp voice, "Beauty! Beauty!" Chu Wuji also laughed and said, "It's Xiaolian. We haven't seen each other for many years. I miss you so much." Mei Qinglian raised her eyebrows and said, "Chu Wuji, if you keep talking nonsense, do you believe that I won't strangle your bird?" Chapter 594. Among the Yinma clan, most of them were old acquaintances. Almost all of them had worked together before. Chu Wuji had known Mei Qinglian for a long time. He also knew Mei Qinglian's character. Hearing this, Chu Wuji immediately put away the white-browed parrot in his hand. Otherwise, Mei Qinglian would really strangle his bird. Chu Xiao cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, Senior Wei, Senior Chu." Chu Wuji subconsciously touched his mustache and looked at Chu Xiao up and down. He said, "Not bad. You're much more promising than I was. You occupy 2 of the top 3 places on the Longhu list. You're the only one in the history of the Longhu list." Chu Xiao shook his head and said, "It's true that I'm the only one, but I dare not compare myself with Senior Chu." Although Chu Xiao was now the first on the Longhu list, Chu Xiao was not so arrogant that he could look down on everyone. When Chu Wuji was young, he might not be worse than him. In the past, Chu Wuji was only ranked 5th. However, Chu Wuji secretly joined the Yinma clan. During this period, his strength was almost a blank. When he appeared in Jianghu, Chu Wuji was already a martial Dao Grand Master. Naturally, he could not continue to stay on the Longhu list. Therefore, Chu Wuji directly became a martial Dao Grand Master from the 5th on the Longhu list. If not for this blank period, it would not be difficult for Chu Wuji to become the first on the Longhu list within 10 years. At this time, Wei Shuya slowly put down the tea in his hand. He looked at Chu Xiao and nodded. He said, "Chu Xiao, you did a good job this time. You even killed a little cow's nose from the Chunyang Dao sect. It's so satisfying." Wei Shuya did not care whether Chu Xiao became number 1 on the Longhu leaderboard or not. At his level, looking at the Longhu leaderboard was like watching a joke. It was just a bunch of youngsters fooling around. There was no need to care about the leaderboard. This matter was not as important as Chu Xiao killing Zhan Yongzi. Wei Shuya did not talk nonsense with Chu Xiao. He put down the teacup and said with a serious expression, "Chu Xiao, you actually do not have a deep relationship with the Yinma clan. However, you have become the spokesperson of the Yinma clan in Jianghu. Even some of the older generation of Devil Dao martial artists are not as famous as you. You were recommended by Mei Las and Lu Jin. Even Chu Xiao spoke highly of you. I believe that it is difficult to find someone more outstanding than you in the Yinma clan, or even in the entire Devil Dao. Therefore, I do not care about your previous identity. I only want to ask you one thing. Are you willing to join the Devil Dao? Are you willing to carry the banner of the Kunlun Devil cult, which is seen as a thorn in the side by countless righteous sects? If you are willing, I can help you fight for everything that the Yinma clan can give you. However, if you are not willing, I will not make things difficult for you for the sake of our past friendship. From now on, Lin Yi is a dead man. There is only Chu Xiao in Jianghu. As long as you do not reveal any flaws, no one will know your true identity. The choice is now in your hands. It is up to you to decide how you will choose." Chu Xiao did not even think about it and said directly, "In the past, I did not have a deep relationship with the Yinma clan. However, now that I have become Lin Yi of the Yinma clan, this relationship can be said to be very deep. Chu Xiao is me, and Lin Yi is also me." Mei Qinglian and the others thought that Chu Xiao was expressing his attitude. In fact, Chu Xiu was saying that he was himself. Chu Xiu was him, and Lin Yi was also him. In the beginning, Chu Xiu actually did not want to rely on the Devil Dao. In the original plot, he could no longer replicate the path that he had taken. Moreover, even if Chu Xiu wanted to replicate it, he did not know what he had experienced in the original plot. Therefore, for the original Chu Xiu, he only pursued the capital to survive and the power that he possessed. He did not even think about relying on the Devil Dao. However, fate made fools of people. It was unknown whether it was fate or karma. In the end, Chu Xiu still had a relationship with the Devil Dao. Even now, his karma with the Yinma clan had deepened. Even if he did not want to carry the banner of reviving the Kunlun devil cult, he still had to carry it. When they heard Chu Xiu's words, everyone present breathed a sigh of relief, especially Lu Jin and Mei Qinglian. The two of them were on good terms with Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu chose to give up in the end, it would not only prove that they did not know him well, but it would also increase the risk of being exposed. For some people, especially those of the Yinma clan who had always been hiding in the dark, if they could not be friends with a living person, they could only be friends with a dead person. Wei Shuya nodded with satisfaction and said, "Since that's the case, then sit down. Chu Xiu boy, I have something for you to do this time, and the reward is very simple. Take it as a meeting gift from me. It's an opportunity for you to accumulate a lot of fame and power in a short period of time in the Yinma clan." What opportunity? Wei Shuya's old, blurry eyes flashed with astonishment. He said coldly, "A chance to avenge the 5 great sky devils of the 9th heaven mountain." Chu Xiu was shocked. The Yinma clan wants to make a move against the entire righteous pugilistic world? Although the 5 great sky demons of 9th heaven mountain had been eliminated, they had stirred up a lot of power. After the Kunlun devil cult, the 5 great sky demons of 9th heaven mountain were the first Devil Dao faction that many righteous sects had joined forces to kill. In terms of strength, the 5 great sky demons of 9th heaven mountain and their subordinates combined were not as strong as the current moon-worshipping cult. However, the 5 great sky demons of 9th heaven mountain had made the righteous pugilistic world fearful because they had seen the power of the revival of the Devil Dao. A single spark could start a prairie fire. Back then, the 5 great sky demons of 9th heaven mountain were that spark. Therefore, they had to be completely extinguished before the prairie fire started. However, although the 5 great sky demons of 9th heaven mountain had been defeated, their Devil Dao alliance was not meaningless. At the very least, when the Devil Dao was at its weakest, it was Wei Shuya and the others who had told the Devil Dao disciples in the pugilistic world that the Devil Dao still had the power to fight. It was also because of that battle that Wei Shuya and the others rebuilt the Devil Dao's backbone that had been broken after the battle with the Kunlun devil cult. It was very meaningful. Even though Wei Shuya had not reached the true fire spirit refining realm, his position in the Devil Dao was actually comparable to that of the true fire spirit refining realm. Wei Shuya waved his hand and said, "I believe that sooner or later, the Devil Dao will make a move against the righteous pugilistic world. However, now is not the time. I am not that crazy. If I make a move now, it will not be an opportunity for you. Instead, it will be sending you to your death." As he said that, Wei Shuya laughed self-deprecatingly and said, "To put it bluntly, the Devil Dao is still no match for the righteous Dao sections. It is not a big deal to be a little cowardly. Only an idiot would charge forward knowing that they are no match for them." At the side, Chu Wuji said faintly, "Back in the 9 heaven mountain, you and the other 4 seniors also knew that you were no match for them, but you still did it." Wei Shuya said lightly, "That was a special case. If the world was filled with smart people, then no matter which faction it was, it would be like a plate of loose sand. Sometimes, a force needs someone to be that idiot. Even if it means losing his life, it's worth it." Wei Shuya waved his hand casually and said, "All right, let's not talk about these old things. Let's talk about serious matters. Chu Xiu, kid, I am not asking you to deal with the righteous Dao sections. Now, the Yinma clan does not have the power to seek revenge on them. The revenge I am talking about is the small factions that participated in the battle against the 9 heaven mountain in the past. In the past, when the righteous Dao sects attacked the 9 heaven mountain, countless small factions attached themselves to them and hit the Devil Dao alliance while we were down. They took our heads to the righteous Dao sects to exchange for rewards and reputation. In that battle, the top combat power of the 9 heaven mountain was killed by the righteous Dao sections. However, Most of the low-level disciples died at the hands of these people. Now, this group of people has used the resources and benefits obtained from that battle to develop their reputation. Now, it is time for them to pay the price. As he said that, a cold light flashed in Wei Shuya's eyes. Suddenly, the temperature in the hall dropped a little. In the past, the 5 great sky demons of the 9-heaven mountain had formed the Devil Dao Alliance. How grand was that? In the end, they were all defeated overnight. Of the 5 great sky demons, only he, who was the weakest and the youngest, was left. He had struggled at death's door until today. All these years, of course, Wei Shuya had hatred in his heart. However, he had endured it because it was not the time for revenge. But now, the Devil Dao was on the rise. The Bright Demon Clan was led by the moon-worshipping cult. They had even recruited disciples in the Jianghu with great fanfare to resist the righteous Dao sections. Although the Yinma clan was keeping a low profile for the time being, they could not remain silent. Wei Shuya looked at Chu Xiao and said, "Chu Xiao kid, I will give you a list. At the same time I will also give you some people. According to the power on this list, I will eliminate them one by one. I don't care about the process. I only care about the results." 300 years ago, these small factions were not ranked in the Jianghu. But 300 years later, with the benefits they gained from that battle, some of them are no longer what they used to be. However, I believe that with your strength, it will not be a problem to solve these problems. After it is done, I will gather the Yinma clan to celebrate for you. You will be the first person of the Yinma clan's younger generation. Chu Xiao nodded. He cupped his fists and said in a deep voice, "Thank you, Senior Wei." Chu Xiao should indeed say thank you. This time, Wei Shuya had given him a great opportunity. The 5 great sky demons of the 9th heaven mountain were very important to the Yinma clan. Now that Chu Xiao had taken the lead to take revenge for the 5 great sky demons of the 9th heaven mountain, his reputation and prestige would be immeasurable. Moreover, after this, Wei Shuya would gather the entire Yinma clan to celebrate for him. This was almost like Wei Shuya supporting Chu Xiao and confirming his status in the Yinma clan. From now on, Lin Yi would be the direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. There was no longer any doubt. Chapter 595. Wei Shuya said that he wanted to give some people to Chu Xiao, but he didn't want to give Chu Xiao all the elites of the Hidden Devil Clan. There were many forces in the Hidden Devil Clan, and their interests were complicated. Not to mention that those people wouldn't listen to Chu Xiao. Some of them wouldn't even listen to Wei Shuya. For example, Mr. Liu was a member of the Phaseless Demon sect, and he had a good relationship with Wei Shuya. Even the whole Phaseless Demon sect had a good relationship with Wei Shuya. However, relationships were relationships. Once it involved interests, they had to be more cautious. Therefore, Wei Shuya didn't use other people, but found a group of rogue cultivators of the Hidden Devil Clan. The composition of this group of rogue cultivators was very complicated. Some of them were rogue cultivators who had obtained demonic cultivation methods, and naturally joined the demonic path. Some of them were the descendants of some survivors of the 9-heaven demonic alliance, and they all respected Wei Shuya. The most difficult part was those warriors who, for various reasons, had no choice but to fall into the demonic path, or were forced into the demonic path by those righteous sections. These people were not weak, and some of them even had a good reputation in the Jianghu. All of them were eccentric and unruly. Wei Shuya handed these people over to Chu Xiao on the one hand, to give him strength, and on the other hand, to let Chu Xiao integrate these people, and condense them into a force, instead of a plate of loose sand. Of course, there was no consideration in this. Wei Shuya believed in Chu Xiao. If Chu Xiao couldn't even handle such a small matter, then what qualifications did he have to complete this task? Therefore, Wei Shuya didn't go with Chu Xiao himself, but asked Chu Wuji to take Chu Xiao there. As for Mr. Liu and Mei Qinglian, their identities were special. One belonged to the Yin Demon sect, while the other belonged to the Phaseless Demon sect. After Wei Shuya gave them some instructions, he let them all leave. The underground stronghold of the Hidden Devil Clan was not small. As Chu Wuji led Chu Xiao to the place where those people were, he said with a smile, "Senior Wei really thinks highly of you, but he's also very careless. He actually gathered those guys together and let you lead them. Anyway, you have to be careful later. Don't think that you have the strength to fight against a martial Dao Grandmaster, And you're ranked third on the Longhu list in the demonic Dao, but those guys might not buy it. Taking a deep look at Chu Xiao, Chu Wuji said blandly, I was one of them. Chu Xiao raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, Senior Chu, with your strength, when you joined the diabolism, you were not cultivated and put in an important position? Chu Wuji said blandly, the diabolism is not a charity. Those righteous sects are right about one thing. Most of the diabolism are ruthless and ruthless. The more strength you can show, the more benefits you can bring to others, the more treatment you will get. When I first joined the Hidden Demon sect, many sects of the Hidden Demon lineage extended an olive branch to me. But these sects did not come for me. They came for my ranking on the Longhu list, for my identity as a member of the royal family of the Wei Kingdom, so that they could use this identity to do something. To put it bluntly, they are only using my identity. The reason I want to join the demonic path is to pursue great power, not to help others. So, I refuse them. Among the people you are about to lead, those who were sent to the diabolism because they cultivated the diabolism are easy to manage. They are the descendants of the Diabolism Alliance in the Nine Heavens Mountain. The hardest to manage are people like me. I have strength, a temper, and I don't want my freedom to be restricted. My temper is extremely eccentric. It is not easy to convince them. Chu Xiao narrowed his eyes and nodded. Since Chu Wuji said so, it proved that this group of people was really hard to deal with. However, Chu Xiao did not say much. He just said blandly, then can I kill people? Chu Wuji looked at Chu Xiao with a faint smile. He knew that Chu Xiao's murderous nature was not ordinary. Moreover, Chu Xiao was not a bloodthirsty person. For him, killing was just the simplest method to achieve his goal. Having been in the diabolism for so many years, Chu Wuji had seen all kinds of bloodthirsty demons and murderers who killed without batting an eye. However, these people had all fallen to the lower hand. Don't be fooled by their ferocious appearance and claim to have countless bloodstains on their hands. However, they could not compare to Chu Xiao. These were just pitiful people who were controlled by killing intent. Killing intent was just an emotion. They could not even control themselves, so how could they not be pitiful? On the contrary, people like Chu Xiao, who saw killing as a tool and did everything to achieve their goals and benefits, were the most terrifying. Such people sometimes would not kill with their own hands, but a word or a decision from them could bury countless lives. Chu Wuji said blandly, I can't tell you whether you can kill people or not. You need to think about it yourself. In any case, whether it is me or Senior Wei, we ultimately look at the results. If you can get things done by killing people, then go ahead and kill. On the contrary, if you cause any trouble because of killing people, then you have to bear the consequences yourself. Chu Xiao nodded in understanding. Chu Wuji pointed to a closed hall in front of him and said, the people arranged by Senior Wei are all inside. Get ready and go in. At this time, there were more than 300 people squeezed inside the hall. There were old and young people in this group, and they were dressed strangely. However, it was certain that this group of people was very strong. Among the 300 people, the weakest was at the Three-Flower Realm, and the strongest was at the Unity of Heaven and Man Realm. Among them, there were more than 30 martial artists at the Unity of Heaven and Man Realm. This number was even more than some of the weaker sects in the 7 sects and 8 schools, such as the Azure Water Sword sect and the Ba Mountain Sword sect. At this time, the hall was in a mess. Some people were whispering, some were making noise, and some were cursing. There were only 10 chairs in the hall, and only 10 people were sitting there. There were bloodstains on the ground, as well as a few pale-faced people who were recovering from their injuries with resentment on their faces. Clearly, before Chu Xiao had arrived, this group of unruly people had already fought. Furthermore, they had fought over something as senseless as fighting over seats. At this time on the seat, a thin martial artist in his 40s wearing a black robe, with triangular eyes, said, Luo Sansong, Zhao Qingping, and everyone else, don't just sit there. Tell me, why did Senior Wei ask us to come this time? To make us all listen to the words of a junior? This is simply a joke. This person was playing with a golden scorpion in his hand. It looked very agile, but if one looked closely, they would find that the scorpion's tail was as black as ink. It was obviously highly poisonous. This martial artist was the famous, poisonous gentleman, Tao Gong Wang in the Devil Dao. In fact, to be precise, this person did not cultivate the Devil Dao, but the Poison Dao. However, in the eyes of most people in the Jianghu, this kind of evil thing belonged to the Devil Dao, so Tao Gongwang was also included in the Devil Dao. This person had wandered in the Jianghu for more than 10 years. Although he was ruthless, he was also cunning. Therefore, even though he had offended many people, he had always been safe and sound. However, he could only blame his bad luck. A few years ago, he used human blood to raise poisonous insects in the land of West Chu, and ran into the hands of little celestial master Zhang Qingzhen. He was almost killed by Zhang Qingzhen's 5 thunder technique. Fortunately, he had more life-saving items, so he escaped with his life. From then on, Tao Gongwang joined the Hidden Devil clan and began to keep a low profile. He did not dare to go too far. This time, Wuxia asked them to gather together and listen to Chu Xiu's orders to avenge the 9 Heaven Demonic Dao Alliance. In fact, Tao Gongwang refused in his heart. In Tao Gongwang's opinion, although Lin Yi was strong and ranked 3rd on the Longhu list, he was still a junior. When Tao Gongwang became famous in the Jianghu, Lin Yi was still a child. Now that he was asked to listen to the other party's orders, Tao Gongwang naturally resisted. Of course, these were all secondary. After all, people under the eaves had to bow their heads. Lin Yi had a big backer like Wuxia, so it was fine for him to listen. However, he really did not want to be enemies with the righteous Dao anymore. A few years ago, he was scared by Zhang Qingzhen, which left a shadow in his heart. It was because of this fear that Tao Gongwang joined the Hidden Devil clan to seek protection. When he first joined the Hidden Devil clan, he wanted to keep a low profile. In the end, even the Hidden Devil clan did not keep a low profile anymore, so he was naturally unwilling. Strictly speaking, he was not a member of the Hidden Devil clan. What did the 9 Heaven Demonic Dao Alliance's vengeance have to do with him? He would definitely find an opportunity later to push this matter away completely. He did not care about the others, but he did not want to go. Luo Sansong was a strong man sitting at the head of the table. His muscles were bulging and his appearance was masculine, as if he was cast from steel. In his hand, there was a ferocious-looking blood-colored beheading knife with a ghost's head. It was half the height of a person, and it was stained with black and purple blood rust, making it look extremely fierce. Blood-mad saber, Luo Sansong was not a standard Hidden Devil clan warrior. He was a rogue cultivator, but he was reckless and liked to fight. His personality was also a little violent, so he had offended many people in the Jianghu. After offending some ordinary warriors, Luo Sansong became stronger the more he fought. However, he had once inadvertently offended many of the warriors of the younger generation of the 9 great clans during the gathering of the younger generation. Thus, he was hated and hunted down. For someone of Ying Bailu's status, even if Luo Sansong had offended him, it was impossible for him to hunt down a rogue cultivator with great fanfare. However, some of the disciples of the other aristocratic families were narrow-minded, so Luo Sansong was chased miserably by them. She was almost forced into a desperate situation. In the end, she was rescued by an expert of the Hidden Devil clan, so she successfully joined the Hidden Devil clan. Chapter 596. The people of Diabolism all had their own thoughts. In fact, the entire lineage had never been monolithic. Not everyone wanted to avenge those who died in the 9 Heavenly Mountain Diabolism Alliance. Therefore, Wuxia let Chu Xiu lead these people and sort them out. Compared to Tao Gongwang's many thoughts, Luo Sansong's thoughts were much simpler. Luo Sansong sneered and said, "Tao Gongwang, you have the most trivial matters." "Junior? What's wrong with junior? Strictly speaking, my seniority is still lower than yours. Why you don't accept me? Why don't we have a fight?" Tao Gongwang was speechless by Luo Sansong's infuriation. He snorted and said, "This is not a matter of seniority. My Yinma lineage has been hiding in the dark for so many years. In the end, Senior Wei let a junior with little experience lead us to provoke the righteous path. Have you considered the danger of this matter?" Luo Sansong waved his hand and snorted, "Consider my ass. I don't care if it's the righteous path or the diabolism. As long as that kid is strong enough, I will kill whoever he asks me to kill. On the other hand, if that kid is not my match, then he can't control who I want to kill." Tao Gongwang had no way to deal with Luo Sansong, so he turned his gaze to Zhao Chengping. Compared to the two of them, Zhao Chengping was much more normal. Zhao Chengping was a middle-aged man in a black robe with a cold expression. When the others began to argue, he sat there alone without saying a word. At this time, seeing Tao Gongwang's gaze, Zhao Chengping just said lightly, "I don't know Lin Yi, and I don't know whether it's good or bad for my Yinma lineage to take the initiative to attack those righteous path sections. I only know that this matter was ordered by Senior Wei. Lin Yi was also chosen by Senior Wei. I only believe in Senior Wei. I believe that Senior Wei will not be wrong." Compared to Tao Gongwang and Luo Santong, Zhao Chengping was from the orthodox diabolism. In the past, his ancestors followed Wei Shuya to the 9 Heavenly Mountain, but they were killed in that battle. Zhao Chengping's lineage had always been protected by Wei Shuya. Therefore, no matter what Wei Shuya said, Zhao Chengping would do as he was told. To him, Wei Shuya was no different from his patriarch. Seeing Zhao Chengping's attitude, Tao Gongwang stopped talking nonsense with him. Instead, he turned his gaze to the others and discussed the plan with them. Although this group of people could be considered part of the Hidden Devil clan, in reality, they all had their own thoughts. Some of it was because of their personalities, like Luo Sansong. But there were also many people like Tao Gongwang who had their own plans. Just when everyone was discussing enthusiastically, the door was pushed open, and Chu Wuji walked in with Chu Xiao, who had already put on a mask. The noisy lobby instantly quietened down. Chu Wuji's prestige was quite great in the Yinma clan. He was the martial arts master who was closest to the true fire spirit refinement realm. Even the arrogant Luo Sansong did not dare to disrespect him. Chu Wuji looked around and said indifferently, "I'm sure everyone knows why Senior Wei has gathered all of you here. This is Lin Yi, a young talent of my Yinma clan. I won't care about what happens next. Leave it to Lin Yi to handle. You guys can continue talking." After saying that, Chu Wuji turned around and left, leaving Chu Xiao alone. Although Wei Shuya did not say that it was a test, in Chu Wuji's opinion, it was actually the first test for Chu Xiao. If he could not even deal with this group of guys, Chu Xiao was not worthy of his current position. Seeing that Chu Wuji had left so decisively, everyone present was stunned. Then they whispered to each other. Some of them even secretly discussed something through voice transmission. They did not show any respect for Chu Xiao. There were many arrogant and unruly people in the Diabolism clan. Not to mention that Chu Xiao was not a martial arts master and did not have that many qualifications. Even if Chu Xiao became a martial arts master, these people might not be convinced. They had been so respectful to Chu Wuji previously because of the reputation and prestige that Chu Wuji had accumulated in the Yinma clan over the past few decades. As for Chu Xiao, his reputation in the Jianghu and his ranking on the Longhu list were not enough to completely suppress the Diabolism martial artists present. Looking at everyone present, Chu Xiao narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, "Everyone, I think you should have heard of my name, Lin Yi." Hearing this, someone immediately sneered in a low voice. There was a hint of disdain in their tone. They had heard of Lin Ye's name, but Lin Yi had said it right in front of them. He was a little too arrogant. However, Chu Xiao then said indifferently, "Of course, it doesn't matter if you haven't heard of it. Now that you've heard of it, please don't forget it. I don't think I need to repeat why Senior Wei Shuya gathered all of you here. What's going to happen next is actually very simple. I don't need you to use your brains. All you need to do is use your knives to kill. You'll kill whoever I say. It's very simple, isn't it?" As his words rang out, a sliver of dissatisfaction appeared on everyone's faces. Wasn't this Lin Yi a little too arrogant? Although they had to admit that Lin Yi was indeed powerful and had even killed the martial arts grandmaster Zhen Yongzi of the Chunyang Dao sect, their seniority was obvious. Most of the people present were more experienced and had a higher seniority than Lin Yi. Lin Yi did not even say anything modest. Instead, he directly spoke in such a commanding tone. If this wasn't arrogance, then what was? Gong Wang sneered in his heart when he saw Chu Xiao's attitude. Previously, he had thought that Lin Yi was someone special. Tao Gongwang was worthy of being an old man who had been in the Jianghu for a long time. The moment Chu Xiao's spiritual power burst out, he had already sensed the danger. He immediately released a large number of poisonous insects, but they didn't rush towards Chu Xiao. Instead, they protected his body. However, as Chu Xiao's soul-suppressing Hades song was displayed, the spiritual power formed ripples. Every time the primordial spirit attacked, A large number of poisonous insects would fall to the ground. Almost in an instant, there was already a blank space in front of Tao Gongwang. Even he himself was attacked by the soul-suppressing Hades song. There was a sharp pain in his head, as if his soul was about to be shattered. Before Tao Gongwang could cry out in pain, Chu Xiu took a step forward and appeared in front of Tao Gongwang almost instantly. One hand was already on Tao Gongwang's neck. Cold demonic qi instantly burst out and sealed Tao Gongwang's meridians. There was a look of horror in Tao Gongwang's eyes. The others didn't expect that Lin Yi would actually attack him. It was simply unreasonable. Just as they wanted to dissuade Chu Xiu, and Tao Gongwang also wanted to open his mouth to beg for mercy, the demonic qi in Chu Xiu's hand burst out. He directly crushed Tao Gongwang's neck and threw him to the ground as if he was throwing a dead dog. Everyone present looked at Tao Gongwang's corpse with a look of disbelief in their eyes. Tao Gongwang died just like that? Lin Yi was actually so daring to kill someone as soon as he came up. Chapter 597. Tao Gongwang's death was actually very unjust. Although his strength was far inferior to Chu Xiu's, he had many evil poisonous insects on him. These things were his trump cards. Although he did not dare to say that he could defeat Chu Xiu, he could at least guarantee that he could last a few rounds in the hands of Chu Xiu. In the past, Tao Gongwang was able to escape from the hands of Zhang Qingjin. This was actually enough to prove Tao Gongwang's strength. However, Tao Gongwang did not expect that Chu Xiu would actually have the intention to kill him. They were both from the hidden devil lineage. It was fine if Chu Xiu made a move in public, but he actually dared to kill him directly. Tao Gongwang did not expect this, nor did the others. Therefore he died. He died a very unjust death. He was strangled before he could use his trump cards. Chu Xiu looked at the surrounding demonic Tao cultivators. Some were furious, some were at a loss, and some were waiting to watch a good show. He said indifferently, "One cannot forget one's roots. Even if we are people of the demonic Tao, we still need to know what is morality and what is kindness. All these years, you have been protected by the hidden devil lineage. You have preserved your strength and lives. Now that we need to use your strength, you are here to make excuses. If this is not ungrateful, then what is? The hidden devil lineage does not need useless trash. We do not need ungrateful stupid insects. You have seen Tao Gongwang's fate. Do you want to be an ungrateful stupid insect and be cleaned up like trash, or follow me to take revenge for the Nine Heavens Demonic Tao Alliance? Choose for yourself." Some of the martial artists present looked a little angry. Some of them were similar to Tao Gongwang. They all joined the hidden devil lineage later. These people did not have much sense of belonging to the hidden devil lineage. Chu Xiu had used such a violent method to kill Tao Gongwang and threaten them. This made them feel very uncomfortable. They didn't believe that Lin Yi could really kill all of them. However, Chu Xiu paused and said, "Of course, it's not that I don't want to give you a chance. Revenge can't be forced. As long as you're not like that stupid worm Tao Gongwang, who is obviously protected by the Yinma clan, but still spouts nonsense and shakes the army's morale. Now, if you want to withdraw or leave, it's up to you. I'll report it to Senior Wei Shuya. From now on, you're no longer members of the Yinma clan." Chu Xiu's words were almost the same as what Wei Shuya had just said to him. It seemed to be a multiple-choice question, but in fact, he had no choice at all. The people who were still filled with righteous indignation instantly quieted down. Even if a few of them were moved, they held back when they saw that no one made a sound in the end. Just as Chu Xiu said, even the Yinma clan hated those ungrateful villains. If they left today, they would be branded with the image of an ungrateful, two-faced villain. They were already not tolerated by the righteous martial world. If they left the Yinma clan now, they could only go to the Bright Demon clan. But as long as their actions were spread out, even the Bright Demon clan would not accept them as disciples. The relationship between the sect and the disciples was mutual. The sect provided shelter and space for you to grow. In the future, they also hoped that you could protect the sect and other disciples in return. Now that this group of people had done such a thing, one could imagine what others would think of them. Moreover, they didn't think that even if they admitted that they were ungrateful and cowardly, the Yinma clan would let them go. With their strength, they had already seen many secrets of the Yinma clan, such as this secret land. If they chose to leave now, Could the Inma clan rest assured that they would keep the secret? Only the dead could keep secrets the best. Looking at the people around him, Chu Xiao said lightly, "What? No one wants to leave? If anyone dares to disobey orders next time, don't blame me for not giving you a chance." With that, Chu Xiao glanced at Tao Gongwang on the ground. Obviously, this was the end. And don't feel wronged. You joined the Inma clan, but you didn't directly enter the phaseless demon sect, the Scarlet Demon sect, and other sects that belong to the Inma clan. Although you have some freedom, you naturally won't get the treatment in the sect. There are many people like you. Senior Chu Wuji who just went out, he was born like you, but in the end, he became a martial Dao grandmaster, an expert of the Inma clan. But think about it, how many of you have the confidence to reach the level of Senior Chu? Senior Chu could reach this stage without relying on anything else, but all of you can't. This time, Senior Wei gathered all of you to avenge the Nine Heavens Demonic Dao Alliance, not to send you to your deaths. This is a chance for you to display yourselves. Who can stand out and who can continue to remain where they are? There are people watching from above. With that said, the anger of the people present dissipated by more than half. What was left was thinking. Indeed, they had joined the Inma clan for a long time. Although they had received protection, in reality, there were only a few of them who could stand out. Now that the opportunity had come, although there was a certain risk, there were also gains, especially to gain a good impression from Senior Wei. At this moment, Luo Sansong suddenly walked out with his ghost beheading knife and laughed loudly. "You're quite good at talking. I can't win against you. I only believe in the knife in my hand. Let's have a few moves. If you defeat me, no matter if you're a senior or a junior, you're the boss. If you lose, I'll go with you." After all, when I was being chased by those aristocratic families, it was the Inma clan that saved me. I'm not an ungrateful old thing like Tao Gongwang. Although Chu Xiao had killed Tao Gongwang with one move just now, no one present could see Chu Xiao's true strength. This was because Chu Xiao's attack was too sudden. Although it was a head-on attack, everyone present, including Tao Gongwang, did not expect that Chu Xiao would publicly use a killer on such an occasion. Therefore, Chu Xiao's attack could be considered a sneak attack. Tao Gongwang did not even use half of his strength before he was crushed to death by Chu Xiao. Therefore, Tao Gongwang's death this time was somewhat unjust. Not only Luo Sansong, but the others also wanted to see Lin Ye's true strength in a head-on attack. Although they had already seen the information on the Longhu list and knew that Lin Yi was very strong, and even had the power to kill a martial Dao grandmaster, seeing was believing. After all, they had not seen it with their own eyes, so they were still somewhat skeptical. Chu Xiao waved his hand casually and said, "All right, make your move." Luo Sansong said in surprise, "Right here? If I destroy this hall and Senior Wei scolds me, it will have nothing to do with me." Chu Xiao shook his head and said, "Don't worry, it can be settled in a few moves. It won't be damaged." Luo Sansong snorted coldly and said, "Arrogant." Although he had to admit that Lin Yi was very famous in the Jianghu and was most likely very strong, he did not believe that Lin Yi would be able to defeat him in a few moves. Although he had challenged Lin Yi this time, he did not believe that Lin Yi could defeat him in a few moves. However, since Lin Yi had said so, he did not stand on ceremony. The ghost-headed beheading blade in Luo Sansong's hand surged with a blood-red light, and even his eyes turned blood-red in an instant. As the blade slashed down, the blood chi and killing intent surged, and a boundless ferocious aura bloomed. There was even a vague demon's howl in the blade momentum. It had to be said that Luo Sansong was not weak. He was definitely considered an expert among those at the unity of heaven and man realm. There were not many warriors of the same level who could block his blade. However, no matter how strong Luo Sansong was, his strength had not surpassed the scope of the unity of heaven and man realm. As for Chu Xiao, there were not many warriors of the same level as him who could be considered an opponent. His opponents had even become those martial Dao masters. As the blade momentum slashed down, Chu Xiao's expression did not change. However, there was a mysterious starlight flowing in his eyes. Given Chu Xiao's current mind power, when he used the Heaven Sun gazing at air skill, a warrior of Luo Sansong's strength had no secrets to speak of in front of him. Chu Xiao could see every change in his moves clearly. Just as the saber aura was about to reach him, Chu Xiu punched out with a punch that contained boundless blood qi. Vast blood qi and killing intent swept out, bringing with it an indomitable and powerful might as it descended. However, there was a strange rhythm in the fist's momentum. As the fist grew closer and closer, Chu Xiu's selfless killing fist actually triggered the momentum of Luo Sansong's blade, causing the power of his blade to become unstable. It started to jump, and there was even a backlash. Luo Sansong had never seen such a strange situation. It was clearly his blade, but there was still a backfire. Was this his power or Lin Ye's? Why did the other party know his power better than he did? Luo Sansong no longer dared to continue with the power backfire. If he continued with the blade, it would hurt both him and Luo Sansong. Hence, at the critical moment, Luo Sansong directly withdrew his blade to defend himself. Chu Xiu's selfless killing fist blasted on Luo Sansong's blade and immediately made a loud sound. Luo Sansong's expression suddenly changed when he sensed the powerful force. He could not help but retreat rapidly. When his feet landed, a hole immediately appeared on the ground. After retreating dozens of steps, Luo Sansong had already retreated to the back of the hall. Chu Xiu performed a hand seal and displayed the demon Buddha of massacre. The evil blood Buddha held a ferocious blood blade and slashed down with the blade. The fierce blood qi soared into the sky. Luo Sansong's blade just now paled in comparison to Chu Xiu's demon Buddha of massacre. Seeing the demon Buddha of massacre's blade attack, Luo Sansong's eyes widened. The power shocked him so much that he was even ready to burn his blood essence to resist. In the end, Chu Xiu's blade did not completely fall. Instead, when it fell halfway, the qi and blood within it directly dissipated, and the demon Buddha of massacre also gradually disappeared. Luo Sansong put down his blade, no longer as arrogant as before. He cupped his hands at Chu Xiu and said with a bitter smile, "Greetings, Lord. I lost, and I admit my defeat." Chapter 598. Luo Sansong told Chu Xiu that he accepted his defeat wholeheartedly. This was not perfunctory, but the truth. He had already seen the power of the slaughter demon Buddha form. It was shockingly powerful. However, in the end, Chu Xiu was able to forcefully retract his attack as if it was a piece of cake. This was 10 or even 100 times more difficult than slashing out that attack. The way Luo Sansong addressed Chu Xiu as Lord convinced him. Although Chu Xiu was much younger than him, for a person like him, strength was the only rule. As long as Chu Xiu's strength was stronger than his, then everything would be fine. At this time, Zhao Chengping, who had been silent all this while, also stood up. He cupped his hands respectfully towards Chu Xiu and said, "Greetings, Lord." Zhao Chengping's thoughts were very simple. Wei Shuya wanted to take revenge for the 9 Heavenly Mountain Demon Dao Alliance. In fact, he wanted to take revenge for his ancestors. He had no reason to object. Moreover, his bloodline had always been under Wei Shuya's protection. Putting aside the fact that Lin Yi, who was very powerful, was leading them, he could accept it even if it was someone weaker. In any case, as long as it was Wei Shuya who said it, he had to support it. When the people present saw that the strongest among them, Tao Gongwang, was killed, and Luo Sansong and Zhao Chengping had chosen to surrender, even if the others still had some ulterior motives, they respectfully lowered their heads and cupped their hands, saying, "Greetings, Lord." At this time, outside the main hall, Wei Shuya and Chu Wuji had actually been watching. When they saw that Chu Xiu had subdued these people in such a short period of time, Chu Wuji could not help but praise, "This kid is really good." Xiao Ling and Lu Jin did not choose the wrong person. In fact, what our Inma clan lacks the most are not experts, but people like this kid who can control the overall situation and really do things. Strength and ability were 2 different concepts. Some people had strength, but it did not mean that they were good in all aspects. Take Chu Wuji for example. Although he was born in the royal family, he was not good at controlling his subordinates and plotting. He could kill people but he could not do anything else. Mei Qinglian was also such a person. However, she was the only one left in the Yin demon sect. Even if she wasn't good at these things, she still had to do it. As for people like Mr. Lu who were not as strong as Mei Qinglian and Chu Wuji, he was actually stronger than the 2 of them. As early as when Mr. Lu was in the unity of heaven and man realm, he had already led the people of the phaseless demon sect to make all sorts of arrangements in the dark, causing quite a lot of trouble in the Jianghu. He himself was also one of the higher-ups of the phaseless demon sect, and he had many subordinates under him. Wei Shuya shook his head and said, "There are actually a lot of capable people in the Yinma clan. Unfortunately, the alliance is the alliance after all. There are too many unstable factors. In the past, when the 9 heavenly demons formed the Demon Dao Alliance, the reason why we were able to set off such a great power was because the 5 of us had quite a bit of strength under us. With them as the core, we were able to form a powerful alliance. Although the strength of the Hidden Devil clan was much stronger than before, there were also more schemes. Although the Phaseless Demon Sect, the Scarlet Demon Sect, and the other sects were loyal to the Yinma clan, they had to consider the interests of their own sects first. The other old fellows of the Yinma clan were even more excessive. They only thought about the interests of their own disciples and grand-disciples, and brought out a large number of disciples. They only thought about the benefits, and when they encountered a problem, they would push the blame onto each other. You said that my Yinmo clan does not lack experts, but what I Yinmo clan lack is a supreme expert that can suppress everyone." Chu Wuji was silent for a while and said, "You mean, a supreme expert like Yi Xiaonan of the moon-worshipping cult?" Although the Bright Demon clan and the Yinma clan were still hostile, Chu Wuji had to admit that the entire Yinma clan could not find an expert who could match Yi Xiaonan. If there was no moon-worshipping cult to share the pressure on the surface, the Yinma clan would not be so relaxed now. Wei Shuya shook his head and narrowed his eyes. He did not know where to look. Not enough. Far from enough. What my Yinma clan needs is not only an expert like Yi Xiaonan, but also an existence like Patriarch Dugu who can suppress the entire Zhonghu. Only then can my Yinma clan completely turn over. Chu Wuji smiled bitterly and did not say anything. Since ancient times, how many people in the world could compare to Patriarch Dugu? Only a handful. Lu Chunyang of the Chunyang Dao sect was one, Bodhidharma of the Buddhist sect was one, Ning Xuanji of the True Martial sect was also one, and there was Patriarch Dugu. Perhaps there were a few people who could compare to Patriarch Dugu, but all of them counted, there were no more than 10. Whether the Yinma clan could produce another expert like Patriarch Dugu, in Chu Wuji's opinion, the hope was slim, and he could not even see it in his generation. At this time, Chu Xiu was also thinking about how he should complete this task. Luo Sansong and the others had already been subdued. Although these guys were unruly, as long as they were obedient, they were still very strong. Therefore, in this regard, Chu Xiu did not need to worry. Moreover, people had desires, and this group of Yinma clan was the same. With Chu Xiu's identity and status, and Wei Shuya standing behind him, these people wanted to stand out, so they had to perform well in front of Chu Xiu. Therefore, the problem in front of Chu Xiu now was how to solve these forces on the list as soon as possible. On the list that Wei Shuya gave to Chu Xiu, those forces were generally not too strong. Some families might have hidden ancestors who had stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, but Chu Xiu was not afraid. With his current strength, Chu Xiu was confident that he could fight with ordinary martial Dao Grandmasters, and even had a high chance of winning. With a 7-demon saber in hand, it was not difficult for Chu Xiu to kill some weaker martial Dao Grandmasters. Therefore, the real difficulty of this task was speed. Chu Xiu had to use the fastest speed to clean up this group of people. Once this group of people sensed that something was wrong, they would either scatter and hide, or they would attract some righteous path sects martial artists, increasing the difficulty for Chu Xiu. At the same time, it would also cause some unpredictable things. But these forces on the list were too scattered. Dozens of forces, most of them in Eastern Qi, some in West Chu, and some in Northern Yen. Chu Xiu would clean up a dozen forces one by one. It was estimated that after he got rid of a dozen forces, the other forces would notice and then respond. After thinking for a while, Chu Xiu almost had a general plan. He said to Zhao Chengping in a deep voice, "Zhao Chengping, you have stayed in the Yinma branch for a long time, so you must be very familiar with these people. Divide them according to their strength and what they are good at, and choose a leader for each of them. Limit the number of leaders to 10, and let Luo Sansong manage the strongest teams." Luo Sansong was just about to say that he was not good at managing these things when Chu Xiu directly said, "You don't have to care so much. When the time comes when I ask you to kill someone, you just have to lead your subordinates to kill someone. Just listen to my commands. Don't tell me you can't do that?" Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Luo Sansong had to spread out his hands and said, "I can do that." In fact, People like Luo Sansong were not suitable to manage these things. But Chu Xiu could not let Zhao Chengping manage everyone. But now Chu Xiu did not know these people well, so he could only do this for the time being. Zhao Chengping was not an idiot, and he did not have any objections to Chu Xiu's way of doing things. On the contrary, if the other party really trusted him so much and let him manage everyone, then either the other party was too stupid and naive, or there was some kind of conspiracy behind it. Sir, which force should we choose first? Zhao Chengping asked. Chu Xiu glanced at the information and said, choose the nearest one, the Wang family of Western Chu. But we don't need all of us to attack. You choose 20 people and attack with me. Remember, among these 20 people, there can't be any warriors in the unity of heaven and man realm. Only those in the 3-flower realm and the 5-cheese-collecting origin realm. Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Zhao Chengping and Luo Sansong felt a little strange. In their opinion, given their strength, they should have just mobilized all of their forces to annihilate these small factions. It would have been a piece of cake for them to get rid of the other party. However, Chu Xiu had only mobilized a little bit of his strength. Why did he have to go to the trouble? But seeing Chu Xiu's confident look, they did not ask much. Whatever Chu Xiu said, they would do. The Wang family of Western Chu was actually very close to Guanxi, not far from the border between Guanxi and Western Chu. They were not weak, but they were not strong either. There were also a few warriors in the unity of heaven and man realm in the family. It was late at night, and the Wang family's hall was still brightly lit. During the day, the Wang family's old ancestor had just held his 188th birthday. At this time, the guests had already left. The Wang family's old ancestor called his family over and lectured the juniors as usual. In the Wang family's hall, over 100 direct descendants of the Wang family were either sitting or standing. They were all gathered around the Wang family's old ancestor. A unity of heaven and man realm martial artist had a lifespan of 200 years. Although the Wang family's old ancestor only had a dozen years left to live, he was still in good spirits and his face was glowing. Looking at the many descendants below, the Wang family's old ancestor stroked his white beard and said, ever since my Wang family's ancestor established the family, it has already been over 300 years. You need to know that it is easy to start a business but hard to maintain it. The reason my Wang family has its current power is because my ancestor followed the Sword Hut sword experts to destroy the demonic Path Alliance 300 years ago. Because he bravely killed the enemy, he was recognized by the Sword Hut's experts and was bestowed with a cultivation technique, allowing us to establish the family. You also need to remember that it was not easy for my Wang family to have what it is today. Cultivate hard and don't be lazy. Only then can we live up to the legacy our ancestor left behind. At this time, a cold voice suddenly came from outside. Since your ancestor left behind so many legacies for your Wang family, then shouldn't your ancestor's karma be repaid by you? Chapter 599. In the middle of the night, a voice suddenly came from the inner residence of the Wang family. Everyone in the Wang family was shocked. The old ancestor of the Wang family stood up and shouted, "Who is it? Come out. Don't play tricks here." With a loud bang, the door of the Wang family's inner residence was blasted open. 2 disciples of the Wang family who were guarding the door fell to the ground. There were no injuries on their bodies, but they were already dead. Chu Xiu was dressed in black and wore an expressionless black iron mask. He carried the 7-demon saber on his back as he walked into the hall. Everyone gasped when they saw him. Not long after Xiaofan, the news of Lin Yi, the hero of diabolism, had spread throughout the Jianghu. Among the top 10 on the Longhu list, he was the only one who came from diabolism and was ranked in the top 10. He had even killed a martial arts master before. At this moment, Chu Xiu was dressed the same as he was in Xiaofan, so it was easy for the Wang family to recognize him. The old ancestor of the Wang family waved his hand and said with a solemn expression, "Lin Yi, the Wang family has no enmity with you." "What do you mean by this?" The patriarch of the Wang family really could not understand. He did not know Lin Yi at all. In fact, he had only heard about Lin Yi through hearsay. But now, Lin Yi had come knocking on his door. What was the meaning of this? Chu Xiu sneered. "No enmity? Old man Wang, you were just showing off the achievements of your Wang family's ancestor 300 years ago. Have you forgotten about it now? 300 years ago, on Jiutian Mountain, Your Wang family's ancestor followed an expert from the sword hut and killed 17 people for my diabolism. Tsk. How powerful. However, a debt of blood must be paid in blood. 300 years have passed, and the interest should increase a little. In the past, your Wang family killed 17 people for my diabolism. Today, I will kill 170 people from your Wang family. The hatred of the past will be repaid tenfold, 100-fold. It's fair and reasonable, isn't it? Hearing this, the old ancestor of the Wang family's expression suddenly changed. He did not expect that his family would be targeted by the Yinma clan because of this matter. In the past, when the Wang family's ancestor participated in killing the 9 Heavenly Mountains Demon Dao Alliance, it was for a prosperous future, so he didn't care about the consequences at all. In the end, the 9 Heavens Demonic Dao Alliance was destroyed. A group of demonic Dao people could only hide in the dark and tremble. They could not think of taking revenge, nor did they dare to. Gradually, the Wang clan forgot about this matter. In fact, in this generation, the Wang clan didn't even realize that they still had this grudge. Usually, the Wang clan's ancestor would teach the younger generation a lesson and tell them about the clan's history. It was only to increase the cohesion of the clan leader. In the end, who would have thought that a period of history from 300 years ago would cause the Wang family to experience a calamity of death? The ancestor of the Wang family hurriedly said, "Let's not talk about the past for now. That was 300 years ago. Sir Lin, please understand. My Wang family has long stopped caring about the conflicts between the righteous and demonic lineages. Ever since I was born, my Wang family has never moved against the demonic lineage." Chu Xiao said indifferently, "The ancestors plant trees, and the descendants benefit from the shade. The karma of the ancestors naturally needs to be repaid by the descendants. Old man Wang, didn't you say before that the Wang family was able to have its current family business because your ancestor exchanged the heads of the demonic Dao warriors? Now that you have enjoyed this family business for 300 years, it is time to return it." A middle-aged warrior who had reached the unity of heaven and man realm stepped forward and shouted coldly, "Ancestor, why are you wasting your breath on him? This Lin Yi is just one person. No matter how strong he is, can he be stronger than the entire Wang family? Everyone, attack together and subdue this little demon. Then, hand him over to the forgetful sword hut to receive the reward." Although this warrior from the Wang family had also reached the unity of heaven and man realm, it was clear that he had not seen the limits of the unity of heaven and man realm. He did not know that although they were both at the unity of heaven and man realm, the difference in strength was like heaven and earth. Furthermore, this kind of strength could not be made up for with numbers. "You shut up!" The Wang family's ancestor shouted angrily at the warrior. His entire body trembled in fear. The Wang family's ancestor was not afraid of Lin Yi. No matter how strong Lin Yi was, he was just one person, a junior of the demonic Dao. He was not an expert like Chu Wuji. What he was truly afraid of was Lin Ye's purpose for appearing here. The Yinma clan wanted to settle the enmity from 300 years ago. Even if they could hide from Lin Yi today, could they hide from the revenge of the entire Yinma clan? It was a colossus that could easily crush the entire Wang family. The Wang family's ancestor pleaded to Chu Xiao, "Young Master Lin, it is true that my Wang family's ancestor participated in that battle back then, but the mastermind of that battle was not my Wang family's ancestor. If the Yinma clan wants revenge, why bother making things difficult for us, a small family? Isn't it better to find the mastermind?" Chu Xiao shook his head and said, "Of course not. Whether it's the mastermind or the accomplice, the Yinma clan's enmity will be avenged sooner or later. It doesn't matter who we find first. You don't have to have any wishful thinking anymore." The Wang family's ancestor let out a long breath and said in a deep voice, "All right. I will avenge my ancestors. Young Master Lin, you don't have to do anything. I am willing to be captured, but young Master Lin, can you let the other disciples of my Wang family live? Leave a trace of my Wang family's bloodline." Chu Xiao said in an awe-inspiring tone, "Your Wang clan has enjoyed for so many years, it's time for you to pay the price. I said that I want to kill 170 people, so I want 170 lives. If human lives aren't enough, then even if I have to kill the dogs of your Wang clan and use their lives to make up for this number." "Lin Yi, you are going too far." The Wang family's ancestor roared angrily. Blood qi rose around his body and turned into a blood sword. He suddenly attacked Chu Xiao. He was so decisive that he burned his blood essence as if he was risking his life. At the same time, the Wang family's ancestor also roared at the other warriors of the Wang family. Run! Run! Although the Wang family's ancestor liked to show off in front of the younger generation and liked to put on face, as the head of the family, the Wang family's ancestor was qualified enough. As a senior of the Jianghu, he was several times older than Chu Xiao. However, he was careful and servile in front of Chu Xiao. He said all kinds of good words and was even willing to use his life in exchange for the survival of his family. The Wang family's ancestor was responsible enough. It was a pity that Chu Xiao came to kill people today. Even if he was responsible enough, he couldn't escape death. At the moment when the Wang family's ancestor attacked with his sword, a demon Buddha of slaughter appeared behind Chu Xiao. But at this time, the demon Buddha of slaughter was not holding a knife in its hand. Instead, it was forming a seal. In an instant, the Wang family's ancestor was shocked to find that the blood sword he had condensed was not under his control. With the movement of the demon Buddha of slaughter, the blood sword turned upside down. Under the Wang family's ancestor's disbelieving gaze, it directly pierced through his protective gang qi and stabbed into his chest. In front of Chu Xiao, who had the demon blood technique, any cultivation method that burned qi and blood would be restrained by Chu Xiao, unless the opponent had a strong physical strength to suppress their own qi and blood. Now that Chu Xiao had the identity of Lin Yi, it was not convenient for him to use a cultivation method like the demon blood technique. He could only use the power of the demon Buddha of slaughter to use the demon blood technique. Although the effect was the same, under the concealment of the demon Buddha of slaughter, ordinary people would not be able to see this change. Chu Xiao walked forward step by step. He stretched out his hand and pushed lightly, directly pushing the Wang family's ancestor to the ground. Now it was the Wang family's turn to tremble. In the hearts of the Wang family's disciples, the ancestor should be a godlike existence, able to block all enemies. But in front of Lin Yi, their ancestor could not withstand a single blow. Just now, the Wang family's ancestor had asked them to quickly escape. This group of Wang family's disciples did not care, but at this time, they were all screaming and running towards the other exit of the inner hall. But before they could escape, a long spear stained with demon qi shot out like a waterfall, smashing a group of people away. Then, another spear struck down a Wang family's unity of heaven and man realm cultivator. Its power was extraordinary. The owner of this demon spear was Zhao Chengping. Although this person usually looked very calm and taciturn, at this time when he made a move, it was incomparably shocking. His spear technique was accurate and fierce, and its power was not weak. Want to escape? Leave your life behind first. Following Zhao Chengping's attack, the more than 20 people that he brought immediately attacked and began to chase the Wang family's cultivators. Although the Yinma clan had very few people, only more than 20 people, these people were the cream of the crop among those of the same level. It was not difficult to fight one against many. Moreover, there were also the two experts, Chu Xiao and Zhao Chengping. The Wang family was easily defeated by them. However, because they were few in number, some people from the Wang family still escaped. After cleaning up the battlefield, Zhao Chengping walked over with the demon spear in his hand and said in a deep voice, "My lord, we have killed all that can be killed, but there are still some people from the Wang family who escaped. Do we need to chase?" Chu Xiao waved his hand casually and said, "Don't care about them. After a while, we will attack the next clan. Remember, only bring more than 20 people will be enough." Zhao Chengping agreed respectfully. However, at this moment he was also very puzzled. He did not know what Lin Yi was up to. If Lin Yi had brought all his people to attack the Wang family this time, Zhao Chengping could guarantee that no one from the Wang family would escape alive. In the end, more than 10 people from the Wang family had escaped. Even when Lin Yi had attacked just now, he had been very careless. It seemed like he had deliberately let these people go. However, Zhao Chengping had always been a cautious person. Although he had some doubts about Lin Ye's arrangements, he did not ask. He did not trust Chu Xiao. It could be said that he had never trusted Chu Xiao. It was only because the person in front of him was chosen by Senior Wei Shuya that he was so respectful to Chu Xiao. He believed that the person chosen by Senior Wei Shuya would not be an idiot. He would not deliberately let the tiger return to the mountain and cut the grass without removing the roots. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.